Good morning. Welcome to Hybrid Health Live, coming at you from Houston Methodist Hospital here in the heart of the Texas Medical Center. I'm Dr. Stuart Corr, Director of Innovation Systems Engineering for the DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center. In the studio today is Dr. Alan Lunsden, Department Chair of Cardiovascular Surgery, Director of the Heart and Vascular Center, and Chief Medical Officer of the Houston Methodist Institute for Technology, Innovation and Education, also known as MITE, here at Houston Methodist. I'm also delighted to be joined by Autumn Waska, who is Vice Consul and Trade and Investment Officer for the Life Sciences and Advanced Engineering section of the UK Department for International Trade. Now, over the last 3 months, Autumn has been working like a Texas tornado. She's gone to great lengths to put together this exciting, innovative and hopefully productive agenda, and I'd like to take this opportunity from the outset to thank her for all her hard work. So what do we have on the agenda today? Well, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our event sponsors, who are the Houston Methodist, DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center, Swansea University, the UK Department for International Trade, and Virtual. Secondly, we will not have an agenda without the participation of all our industrial and academic partnering companies and organisations, whom we are going to hear from later in the show. So looking in detail at the agenda, we kick off with a discussion on the need for UK-Texas healthcare engagement. We follow this up with a spotlight on 4 unique UK organisations focused on making this happen. These include the Association for British Health Tech Industries, ABHI, Medilink UK, the Department of International Trade, and Innovate UK. After the break, we then explore unique soft landing opportunities for UK companies and academic programmes, namely the Texas Medical Centre's Innovation Institute, Houston Methodist Hospital, and in particular, the Swansea University Houston Methodist Partnership. To end the morning's live session, we'll hear straight from the horse's mouth from case study UK companies that have successfully made it big in Texas and the trials and tribulations associated with that journey. To that end, we are delighted to have representatives from Paxman, SurePulse, TestCard and Virtual give their anecdotes and guidance for other UK companies wishing to follow suit. At 12 noon, we then go strictly into the Hopin platform to take part in a variety of interactive sessions from our UK and US organisations, as well as my favourite part, the interactive startup pitches. We have a total of 7 UK startup companies who are ready and waiting in their vendor booths from 12 noon to 1:30 to engage with you. These include Directed Systems, Elytra, Scalpel.ai, See the Signs, Machine Medicine, Arthronica, and 3D Life Prints. So I encourage you to go speak with them and use interactive networking features, as well as visit all the other booths in the expo area. Now, as mentioned earlier, we're streaming this live studio feed into Hopin, and encourage you to register in Hopin for the best possible experience if you're watching us from our other streaming channels such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and LiveStream. So please go to hybridhealth.org to be taken to the registration page. There you will be clicking on all the available icons on the left hand side of your browser to activate the specific sections. For example, this live stream can be watched by clicking on the stage icon. Finally, share your experience on social media by using the hashtags HybridHealth, UK Innovation and Houston Methodist. Alternatively, send your questions via pollev.com, enter DeBakey and send in your question that way. Or you can join by text and ask a question. Go to text DeBakey to 37607 to text in your message. And now, to kick off today's events, I would like to turn the show over to Autumn Waska.
Thanks so much, Stuart. My name is Autumn Waska, and I work for the UK's Department for International Trade, based in Houston, Texas. It is an absolute pleasure to be part of this event, and I'd like to thank each of you for being here today. I would also like to particularly thank Houston Methodist for their enthusiasm and effort in supporting UK innovation, as well as all of our speakers and companies presenting and pitching today. So let's jump right in and hear from our first panel about the need for UK-Texas healthcare collaboration. This session will be led by Dr. Alan Lunsden, Chair of the Department of Cardiovascular Surgery and Medical Director at the Houston Methodist DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center at Houston Methodist. Joining him is Consul General Richard Hyde, based in Houston, Texas, Richard Hebden, Interim Director of Health and Life Sciences at Innovate UK, and Neville Young, Director of Enterprise and Innovation at the Yorkshire Number Academic Health Science Network. Dr. Lumsden, I'll turn it over to you to share your thoughts regarding the interest and need for this type of collaboration and lead the conversation from there.
Well, thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Stuart, for putting this together, and thank you for everyone who's participating. So let's get down to basics. Why do I think this is important? I mean, it's important at a number of levels. On a personal level, you know, I come from the UK. My background is I'm another Scottish guy, so we have 2 Scotsmen and 1 English girl, you know, up on this panel here in Houston, Texas. My journey really was from a little town. I came from a town of 10,000 people in central Scotland, halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow. I now work in a medical centre here that is 110,000 people work in medicine on a daily basis, so 11 times the size of my little town. I've always been interested in innovation, and my journey here really was from Scotland through Atlanta at Emory University, and then came on down to work here at Houston Methodist Hospital. It is a very, very different environment from that which you experienced in medicine in the UK, and there are clearly advantages and disadvantages of both. But the bottom line is that my exposure to UK technology, UK research, there are a lot of things that are done much better in the UK and that we in the US can actually learn from. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs in history really have come out of the British education system. And the British education system, many of my partners, you know, because Houston is an incredibly cosmopolitan place. It's one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the United States, which may come as a huge surprise for people who are watching this. They think that we're all cowboys, we wear cowboy boots and hats. And yet, if you compare it with New York, there are more languages which are spoken here, and there are a huge diversity of the population. A lot of that basically is generated based upon 2 things. Number one is this is the energy capital of the world. And so a lot of people go from here to Aberdeen. They go backwards and forwards because of the North Sea oil. It's also, as a business entity, the Texas Medical Center is the 8th largest business district in the United States. So it's a huge, huge money generator and attracts people really from all over the world. So one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later is that in moving down to Houston from Atlanta, you know, the 2 things that you're aware of are NASA and oil and gas. And one of the innovative things that we've done is to try and pull these together. And we're going to talk about an innovative program that we actually got an award from. This is from the British American Business Council for an organization called Pumps and Pipes. I work in the heart and vascular business, the pump and the pipes. And so when you get together with engineers from oil and gas, they told me that they were in the flow assurance business. I said, no, you're not. You're not. You know what you're talking about. You're not in the flow assurance business. I'm in the flow assurance business. But when you boil these things down, they also told me, by the way, that they work through long, thin tubes. Well, that's kind of what we do with blood vessels on a daily basis. And so Houston has a gigantic engineering hub, and it's really focused on oil and gas. And of course, there's also all human spaceflight essentially goes through Houston. So it's trying to look to see where those connections can be made. Are the engineering principles that are used to drill a pipeline can be used to drill through an occluded blood vessel, for example. And so that's really what we're looking for, is we were looking for inter-industry collaborations. When you look inside medicine, cardiologists are different from cardiac surgeons, but 90% plus of their education is exactly the same. We're looking for people who tackle a problem but have no preconceived notion about how you're going to solve that problem. And that's one of the things I think is so important, is bringing in people from different industries, different parts of the world, is to try and bring that brain power together to brainstorm about how we can actually solve problems. So that's my pitch. Maybe I'll turn it over basically to Consul Richard Hyde and see what their thoughts are basically in terms of, you know, what the consul in Houston sees as an opportunity with the UK.
Thanks, Alan. And to be honest, you've given my speech for me. One of the great frustrations we have down here in Texas, so I cover 5 states, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So I cover what we call the South Central region. But obviously, Texas is the big beast. It's a state of around 30 million people. It has 4 mega cities, 4 of the top 11 cities in the United States are based in Texas. So you got Houston, of course, where I'm sitting today. You have Austin, every year the fastest growing major city in the United States. You have Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which is the third or fourth largest economic center in the United States. And then you have San Antonio, which is another fast-growing city. So between these four cities, we call it the Texas Triangle. It's a really slim slither in the middle of Texas, a relatively small piece of territory. There are 21 million people there. These are 21 million of the wealthiest, fastest growing economic centers in the United States. So the great frustration for us is that many people in the United Kingdom, when they think of the United States, they think of the two coasts. They think of the East Coast, New York, they think of the West Coast, Los Angeles or San Francisco. But I would argue that the growth in the United States is actually in the third coast, what we call the Sun Belt. Heart and soul is Texas, but the whole slither right across that border with Mexico, that's where the growth of the United States is. It's where the growth in population is. It's where the growth in the economy is. It's where the growth in innovation is. It's where the growth and opportunity is. And the reason I talk about that a lot is if you look at where Americans are invested, if you look at where California companies and New York companies are investing, it's right down here in Texas. There's a huge exodus of companies, tech companies in particular, out of California down into Texas. And so my one of my bosses many years ago said to me, the very simple thing about investment, you want to understand where to invest, watch what everybody else is doing and watch what the locals are doing. And in the United States, the locals are coming here. So for UK companies, if you've got anything, whether it's a medical device, whether it's a life science innovation, whether it's a real kind of clever tech gadget or app, if you want to see it grow, go where the growth is, and the growth is right here. But the other thing I was going to say is one of the really interesting things about Texas, and so the various doctors on this panel are much more aware of this than I am. We have a massive challenge in the UK and across Europe and in most developed countries with an aging population. Texas is I think is the youngest state in average population age in the United States. The fast growing population here are young. There's a huge wave of the population that's under the age of 25. So it's like a developing country. It's like a developing country in terms of its demographics. As Alan said, it's a hugely diverse demographic as well. So you've got diversity you don't get in other parts of the United States. But what you've also got is a captive audience of highly intelligent, well-educated people. There are universities abound. So you have talent, you have growth, you have youth, you have working age population. That creates a different medical challenge, but it also creates an incredible opportunity for UK companies. So the end of my sales pitch really is that this is where it's happening in the United States. So if you're really interested in whatever sector you're interested in, if you want to come and explore and see where to drop in, this is the place to do it. It's also very low tax, relatively low regulation, and relatively inexpensive. And I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Let me make one comment, and then we'll come to Neville. One of the biggest advantages you've got is your accent, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it sounds kind of cute, but it's very true. Americans and Texans in particular love people from the United Kingdom, and I'll give you a funny story. I was actually, as a resident, walk into a patient's room one day, and he was in the shower, and I said, "I'll be back," and he said, "Whoa, stop, come on in here. Where are you from?" "From the UK." And it was, you're automatically in. So it gives you kind of a leg up on the competition because you really have automatic credibility. Well, you can destroy that credibility, but that gets you in the door, and it's very important. So Neville, would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Alan. And again, I should offer my thanks to Autumn and Stuart for putting this all together. It's great to be here. I think I'm going to pick up on a couple of threads that Alan and Richard have already raised. I think what my role in the UK is about finding really good, innovative companies and getting them ready for the market. And actually, that challenge, I think, in many ways is the same on both sides of the Atlantic. What do companies in the UK on the way up need? Well, they need to prove that their product works. They need a really good, solid evidence base that their product works. And where do they build that evidence base? Well, they build it in the NHS. And I think, Alan, I hope you would agree that the NHS also has some credibility in the US as well as a place where great innovation happens, where there is generally great service to patients. And so I think if we're talking about the innovative companies we see in the UK, they're building an evidence base that I think chimes in America. We've got very many of the similar problems that you have as well in the States, particularly in a post-pandemic environment. The challenges of waiting lists, elective care challenges. How do we deal with our workforce that's incredibly stressed? So I think we see some of the same challenges in the UK as you in the US, and I think building a product in the UK is a really great thing to do. It's very hard to get rich in the UK market. Globally, it's not a massive market. And what companies need to think about is when they're ready, is how they enter into that thought process around export. And again, as an HSN, working with collaborators in DIT, collaborators like the ABHI, who you'll hear from later, and Medilink, how do we accelerate those companies to dip their toe into the US market, to get a feel and a flavor for the enthusiasm that exists in the US? And I think that's part of our role as an ecosystem in the UK, connecting into colleagues in the US through Autumn and Stuart and Alan and Richard and others, to really make that journey as easy as possible, because the opportunities are there. And we have we are, as Alan said, we are great at invention in the UK. There is some fantastic health tech innovation available in the UK that will transfer into the US market. And we're here to help companies do that. And working with ABHI, things like their US Accelerator program really helps move that stuff forward. And if you want an example of success that the HSN has had, maybe in some cases by association, it's great to see at least 4 companies from the UK on your list here that the HSN has worked with. I see Paxman, and I see Verity, I see 3D Life Prints and See the Signs, all companies that the HSN have touched upon in the UK, now entering into this opportunity in the US. So I think the time is now, the time is right, and I think if you're interested in this, getting to this market, work with colleagues in the UK to make it as easy as possible to happen. We can help you link together with Richard in the US, with great places like the Texas Medical Center, to try and make those initial introductions and conversations so much easier. So I'm going to stop there. I think as an HSN, we recognize the benefits of doing this for businesses, and building good, sustainable businesses means export, and the US is a great market to do that into.
Well, thank you, Neville. Closing out this section, let me introduce Richard Hebden. Richard, your thoughts, please.
Good morning. Hi. This is tremendously exciting. I think that, as our previous speakers have outlined, there's some tremendous opportunities in terms of Texas-UK collaborations in this space. There's clearly a lot going on in Texas that UK businesses should be in the health innovation space should certainly be aware of. We have done some mission work in this space, and my colleagues Chris Gear and Chris Sawyer from Innovate UK have worked with Autumn and colleagues on a previous mission in digital health, which is a very hot topic area for us right now. And I think likewise, the benefits of working with the UK in terms of the life science ecosystem that we've built up over the years, and which I believe we punch well above our weight on the international stage, make an attractive place also for US companies to consider taking advantage of some of the facilities and capabilities in our ecosystem. So Innovate UK, for example, through the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, has made investments in the Accelerating Detection of Disease program, which is a 5 million person cohort, which will enable businesses and researchers to access a dynamic cohorts, large, well annotated, accessible populations of patients and volunteers to carry out a range of clinical studies to recruit patients for clinical trials, and do so at scale and relatively quickly as well. And oftentimes that's not so easy to achieve in the US. So I think a lot of reasons to work with the UK, a lot of reasons for UK businesses to consider coming and seeing what's going on in Texas, and likewise looking at how they can scale and take forward their businesses.
Well, thank you. Just to echo some of the previous comments. So, for example, we have a really good Italian restaurant right in the middle of the medical center, and it was renamed the Third Coast. And there's a reason for that. And it was basically what Richard was saying was that a lot of people from outside the United States think of the East Coast, the West Coast. We believe the action is taking place down here on the Gulf Coast, and that sets the direction of the importance of innovation, not just at Houston Methodist. We're just one part of a big wheel that's going on here, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the opportunities in Texas Medical Center a little bit later. So with that, I believe I'm going to hand it off to Paul Benton, and Paul's going to tell us a little bit about his company, or his Association of British Health Industries, ABPI. Hopefully we have Paul. All right, we don't have Paul yet, so let's just basically, any questions that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, just to remind the audience again, please go to Hopin. There's a lot of action in the chat. There's already about 4 companies here that are attendees, and they're saying, hey, we're doing some great stuff here. For example, Renovos is developing an orthobiologics platform based on nanoclays. So I really want to look into that. It's fantastic. We have here, let me see. Shout out if you like to contact with us at PEP Health. The patient experience platform transforms how we can listen to patients to support value-based healthcare. So this is all going on in Hopin in the chat section. So again, just to reiterate, if you're watching this via YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or Livestream, go on over into Hopin. It's hybridhealth.org, and the links are everywhere, so please pop into there. Do we have maybe Tom Elliott on the line?
Yeah, I'd emphasize Hopin. I mean, we used it for a couple of the meetings. It's a different kind of experience in terms of the level of interactivity that can actually take place. And, the goal in these kind of remote broadcasts is how do we engage the audience as best we can. We spend a lot of time thinking about this. We're actually broadcasting at the moment out of a studio that we built inside the Heart and Vascular Center. We'd actually done this before COVID came along, and this thing went to a whole different level, once COVID hit. And this was really the main method by which we communicated, across our entire Methodist system of how we were actually going to use this. So it's been run by, a pretty talented, it's really a television studio, and Autumn here always wanted to be a broadcaster, so this is basically her opportunity.
I know, it's very exciting. It's a very exciting day. But before we get Paul back on, I did want to ask you, Dr. Lumsden, if you could tell us just a little bit about the Texas medical landscape and the Texas Medical Center in general, just so that our viewers in the UK know.
So I'm going to cover that a little bit in my presentation a little bit later, but let me give you the broad strokes. This is a wild and crazy place. Texas Medical, and I spent half my life trying to explain this to people and generally failed dismally because it's such a different concept. Texas Medical Center is like a geographic area of the city. Chelsea, Sight Hill in Edinburgh. It is a huge area. It's like about 150 acres. And it is all not-for-profit healthcare. And so it was created by, actually what happened was a guy called MD Anderson. MD Anderson is ranked as the #1 cancer center in the United States. And it is part of Texas Medical Center. Everyone assumes that this guy, MD Anderson, was a physician, and we just put MD on the front of his name. Usually it's on the back of your name. None of that's true. He was a businessman who died and left his fortune to the benefits of the citizens of Houston. His name was Monroe Dunway Anderson. He had nothing to do with medicine. And the city forefathers, who thinks about things like this, decided they were going to build a medical campus. And they bought up about 140 acres, which was swampland, which they drained. Swamp creatures still kind of climb out of it every now and again. You got to keep them down there. And they made it not-for-profit. And so you get free land here. And you can only run a not-for-profit organization. And so that led to this incredible development here. There's probably 15 hospitals, 3 medical schools here now, all within walking distance. We're connected to our major competitors with tunnels. Who does things like that? But what this has created is this gigantic economic engine for the city. It is easily the biggest in the United States. I hesitate now to say it's bigger than some of the ones in China because they're gigantic. But in the Western world, this is the biggest medical complex that exists. And so Texas Medical Center is an area. Think of it as the federal government. They run parking. which is not to be sneezed at, because that's like a multi-million-dollar operation actually. And then within it are the states, and the states are the hospitals, the medical schools, and things like that. So, Paul, looks like we got you back.
Oh, good to be back. I'm sorry about that. There was obviously a glitch in the matrix.
No problem. Yeah.
It's great. Well, thank you, and thanks so much, for inviting me to say a few words today. It's really great to be with you all. For those of you perhaps who don't know ABHI, don't know me, so quick introduction. My name's Paul Benton. I head up the international division of ABHI, and for those of you who don't know who ABHI is, that stands for the Association of British Health Tech Industries. So we're the UK's Health Technology Trade Association. So for some of you, particularly from the US, you may for example, be familiar with AdvaMed, which is our American counterpart. And our role as an organisation is very similar in that we represent our members here in the UK to stakeholders. We support them with regulatory and technology adoption challenges. And we help to create an environment where their technologies are able to safely reach patients, both domestically and overseas. So I suppose when we talk about health technology, I suppose it's worth highlighting that really what we're referring to is medical devices, diagnostics, digital health technologies, meaning really that all of our members are focused on the full patient pathway. So be that prevention through to diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and the management of conditions. So one thing that I suppose all of our members and the wider health tech community have in common, of course, is our desire to enhance patient care, to help support efficiency improvements within healthcare systems, and that's often done through collaboration. And the past year, I suppose, really has demonstrated this like never before with the global pandemic. So as the UK's Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, commented at ABHI's virtual parliamentary reception earlier in the year, the health tech sector, I think, really has truly stepped up in response to the pandemic over the last sort of 15 months or so. The sector is absolutely integral to the provision of high quality care. And in the UK, we have a very proud legacy and tradition of medical innovation, from the discovery of the DNA's double helix to the invention of the first intraocular lens. The UK continues to push medical boundaries. It's part of what makes us, proud to be Brits. And a critical part of that is our diverse community of small and medium-sized businesses who work very closely with the world-class academic and research institutions that the UK is able to boast, and really to bring their technologies and services to the NHS and further afield. So when it comes to looking at sort of beyond our borders, the US, is front and center. It really is by far, in a way, the largest market for health tech in the world. And so being able to bring high quality health tech to patients in the US is a burning ambition for many UK businesses, which I suppose brings me back to my own role at ABHI, which ultimately is to support those businesses, those UK businesses, with their export journeys, with their international growth plans, their strategies, and with market access. And I suppose we do that in a number of ways, shaping policy and providing opportunities for companies to partner and engage with customers around the world. And one important tool for us to support industry and international collaboration is through our US Accelerator program, which is really all designed around supporting companies with their entry and upscaling their activities in the US. And currently we're helping 30 businesses on an annual basis, with their US journey. So I won't go into perhaps too much detail in the specific ins and outs of that program here, but what I would like to comment on perhaps is a little bit about the experience that we've had from visiting the US over the past several years, and particularly the last 5 years in Texas, which is as long as our US Accelerator program has been running. So I suppose our first consideration, when looking at the US was which states, where do we look to create our launch pad, our kind of soft landing? And we know Massachusetts is highly developed, and work coming out of California is world renowned. But what we found in Texas was, I suppose, a real attitude to innovation, which was incredibly open and a willingness to collaborate, which was, well, frankly palpable. And I don't think we could have found a better part of the US, anywhere else really that could better that. So it's obviously not just about having a business-friendly environment. That is one thing, but what's also needed is scale, and clearly Texas has that in abundance. As a standalone country, it would be, I think it's the 11th largest health economy in the world. It's home to the regional headquarters of some of the country's largest healthcare providers, and in fact, in a list of the US's top 12 largest cities, 4 of those are in Texas. So, scale, with that scale comes a highly developed health ecosystem, and crucially a demand from patients for the very best in health technologies, which is fantastic. So, I suppose in thoughts a little bit on Houston. In Houston, as you were just talking there, Alan, around the TMC. I mean, you're home to the world's largest medical area in the Texas Medical Center. I think it's over 8 million patient visits a year into the TMC, which is truly staggering. It's home to, as you mentioned, some of the world's largest and best institutions. From a pediatric perspective, you've got Texas Children's, which is the largest children's hospital. You mentioned MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is the world's largest cancer hospital. The phrase "everything is bigger in Texas," I think, really does come to mind, and it is absolutely true. But of course, it's not just all about the scale. When you look at the depth and the quality of the hospital systems in the TMC, you really do see the best of the best, and it's fabulous, obviously, to be here, and with Houston Methodist, of course, as an absolute shining light and example of that. So that's great, and clearly Alan and Stuart and the rest of the faculty, the work that you do on a day-to-day basis is truly world-class and world-leading. So that's incredible to see, and I'm delighted that I've seen that in practice firsthand when I've been in Houston. So I know you'll touch on a lot more of this a little bit later in the agenda, but certainly I would say that the TMC is home to some of the best hospitals in the US, and certainly it offers a huge opportunity for companies with innovative technologies to be able to work with all of them. So, if you then move across perhaps to Austin, the state capital, the technology ecosystem there is really just exploding. The UK companies like Babylon have been making the city home to their US operations, which is testament to the tech talent that the city attracts. It's an incredibly exciting place to be, and when you partner with leading local hospital systems who are focusing on value-based care and population health in a tech-focused ecosystem like that, which is seeing increasing funding flows of investor dollars, really sort of pouring in, you soon realize that, again, that's a great place to grow a business. The city is also home to the ABHI Innovation Hub at Dell Medical School, which provides a physical location at the heart of our US Accelerator program and activity that I kind of mentioned before. And then, of course, going from there slightly further south and perhaps a little bit to the west, you've got San Antonio, which is home to really US military medicine, I would say. I mean, Fort Sam Houston on the outskirts of San Antonio is really quite exceptional. It's home to the Brooke Army Medical Center, Center for the Intrepid, the Institute of Surgical Research, all of which are truly exceptional facilities out with their programs and support the advancement of military medicine. And so, I would say expect real excellence in specialities associated with the military there, of course. So neurology, regenerative medicine, rehabilitation, wound care, burns, trauma, just to name but a few. And I certainly see that the health tech sector has a really important role to play here, and the military can be a great partner to help accelerate effective technologies. So I think then when you move to more towards the north of the state, you reach Dallas Fort Worth metropolis, and you look at examples of what's there in Dallas Fort Worth. You've got University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. You've got one of the country's largest medical schools where there's treating more than 60 subspecialties, and you also have an increasing number of Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered there, as well, of course, as playing home to the headquarters of many of the largest healthcare payers, group purchasing organizations. So I say all of this really just to give you a sense of the business environment that Texas, is known for, and the opportunity there. So certainly, Texas as a state, it boasts real healthcare and business credentials. It's also incredibly well connected. It provides a great springboard to other states and regions in the country. And at ABHI, we've led multiple delegations to Texas over the years, but we've also developed fabulous networks across other important clusters in the US, including the likes of Tennessee, California, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and many others. So there's a real rich tapestry when it comes to healthcare in the US, and each region, clearly has its own unique assets and strengths. So I suppose my advice to anyone looking to ensure the US market, particularly those UK businesses that are perhaps looking at making those first steps, clearly, first do your homework. Ensure, it sounds obvious to say, but really you do need to make sure that you have got a really well thought through, go-to-market strategy, and that you get the right advice and expertise that you need to be able to help form that plan. The US is a great opportunity, but it's also very easy to lose money there if you don't make the right first steps. So I think my second focus, my second thought around this would be, advice to companies would be, really do focus, do choose where you're going to go, be purposeful with the approach that you take, don't spread yourself too thin, and try to find a health system partner that will work with you, one that really understands your technology and the value that it will bring to patients, and will support you for the longer term. So from there you can look to expand further afield, but I think it's only really once you've established those key partners and partnerships that you'll be able to grow in a sustainable fashion. In that way. So, I mean, of course, clearly I'm biased, but I think UK companies have a great opportunity to be successful in the US, and a really good opportunity to be successful in Texas. But I think, you also have to consider and look at some of the kind of wider trends as well. So, I mean, our nations, the UK and the US, are coming ever closer together. I mean, the UK, of course, is outside of the EU now, and with that comes a sovereign regulatory system, one that, as it develops, will no doubt look to learn from and align with global regulations and regulators, and in particular the US system, of course. And negotiations for a free trade agreement between the countries is ongoing, and certainly look forward to positive news, and hopefully the not too distant future, which will, I'm sure, provide even more opportunity for companies to do business on either side of the pond. So I think it's a really exciting time. I'm really looking forward to strengthening these ties even further in the months and years to come, and to be able to work with fabulous institutions like Houston Methodist, and to work really closely with our partners in the UK, with the Department of International Trade and Innovate UK and others, and the academic health science networks, who you've heard from already, all really important players in making up the ecosystem in the UK. And I think for UK industry, we just want to support you and make you successful, and our US Accelerator program was created to really just try and do just that. So really delighted to speak with you, and thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Paul. I'm glad the Matrix released you, but we're going to kind of move on now. We're going to hear from Tom Elliott from Medlink UK and Department for International Trade. Tom.
Yes, thank you. So I have got a few slides to share with you today, because I think that's going to be the easiest way to get across very quickly, because it is going to be a succinct presentation about the Department for International Trade. We do try and get involved wherever we can to support companies, so we do cover quite a lot of content. Just to take you through it as a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm more than happy for any of my details to be shared, and to pick any questions up that people may have individually, either through Autumn or direct to myself. So to kick off, I suppose good afternoon to those of you in the UK, and good morning to our friends and colleagues in Texas. I'm the Life Sciences, Healthcare and Bioeconomy Lead for the Department for International Trade in the Northern Powerhouse region of the UK. So over the next few slides, as I've said, I'm going to try and give a brief understanding around the Department for International Trade, what we do, our objectives, the overseas network, the priorities of the organisation, and finally the process by which companies can access support either in the UK or the US. So the Department for International Trade, or DIT, helps businesses to export, drives inward investment, negotiates market access and free trade deals, champions free trade, and DIT is responsible for promoting British trade across the world and ensuring that the UK takes advantage of the opportunities available overseas. I work as part of the trade team within DIT, and as such our main focus is to support and encourage UK businesses to export more whilst encouraging best practice and ideally growth that can be sustained and taken forward. I have colleagues who work within the inward investment teams, and this group of specialists work with international organisations and governments to encourage and support overseas investment back into the UK. By opening up new markets, strengthening trade links with existing partners, DIT aims to underpin the government's agenda for a global Britain. And as DIT, we support companies by providing access to information, advice and practical assistance. The primary delivery of this in the UK begins with an international trade advisor. And these individuals come from real-world international trade export experience. And ideally, that's combined with sector-specific knowledge of the life sciences sector and healthcare. And having benefiting from somebody who's got both international trade and sector-specific experience is really invaluable, particularly in the early stages or when you're looking at more complex markets or regulatory pathways, innovation processes, value propositions. And that's where DIT hopefully can get really involved in the initial stages of a company's export journey. The greatest asset, though, for the international trade advisors is DIT's network of overseas commercial officers. These people are based in embassies, commissions and consulates around the world, and the individuals there are the primary network through which UK companies can access international contacts because these people have the local knowledge. We appreciate that developing international markets and exporting is an investment for companies, and at no point should finance or access to finance impede this development. So the regional international trade advisors, along with select partners, have a really solid understanding and grounding of national and local funding landscapes to ensure that they give the most appropriate advice and support. DIT also works alongside UK Export Finance for support, advice and financial assistance, and that's really linked to the capacity that companies may require when securing large or significant international orders. As DIT, nationally, locally and internationally, we support a number of exhibitions, conferences and trade missions that take place around the world. These programmes are often delivered by or in alignment with our trade challenge partners and offer UK businesses the opportunity to meet potential overseas commercial contacts whilst benefiting from the support of industry experts. DIT operate in 111 countries across 177 overseas posts, and that's with more than 1,400 international staff. Our network not only provides advice and highlights opportunities, but also drives the demand for British goods, services and investment. Our USA Life Sciences team consists of 19 staff based across 7 locations. These are Chicago, Boston, New York, Washington DC, Houston, Los Angeles and San Francisco. Via this network of DIT support, UK-based life sciences companies have access across the whole of the United States. We're not trying to kind of shoehorn companies into areas or regions that don't fit, but these are by far and away the areas where we have seen significant opportunity in the past, and as such, that's where DIT has chosen to base their life sciences team. And across that network as well, you do see a divergence in terms of subsector. So medical devices, biotech, oncology, because of some of the basis and some of the support that's available in market, it is very much something that we discuss with Autumn and the colleagues that she's got in the Houston team. So what are the kind of headlines and priorities for DIT in the US? I imagine that everyone has seen the news, heard sound bites, or been engaged in a discussion around the free trade agreement negotiations with the USA. Obviously, that would be transformational for the UK and for the US in some ways. For healthcare and life sciences, these discussions and the implications are not just on trade, but they cut across innovation, governance, and regulation. So because of that, they're incredibly significant. And part of DIT's role within that is to ensure that we're taking the most sensible steps forward and working to extensively map out what an agreement like that could look like, and ensuring that if one does go ahead, it maximizes the opportunities without exposing any risks or adverse implications. Digital health has been identified centrally by DIT as an area of high potential and as such a focus for the North America team as a whole. This is particularly relevant for myself. I cover the north of England, where we've got some phenomenal examples of digital health being deployed in life sciences and healthcare. I think, across the world, the UK probably represents, in terms of data capturing, the most complete example of cradle to grave data within the UK. We've got fantastic work going on in the north of England, both in tracking that data, using that data and deploying it, but also in looking at healthy aging and assisted living. Now, because of this priority, there is going to be additional activity within North America delivered from the UK, which will be in addition to the normal sort of the normal support directed towards the sector in the region. The National Genomic Healthcare Strategy is also something that features within the US program. That will ensure that the UK can offer patients the best possible predictive, preventative and personalised care by harnessing the potential of advanced genome sequencing. That strategy focuses on three key streams of work, which is diagnosis, prevention and research. And it's an area in which the UK is looking for both collaboration, investment and deployment with the US across all streams. The UK has pushed forward with its genomic strategy and become a world leader for delivery and innovation. And as I said, the US represents a key partner in that strategy. Project Defend, some people may have come across in the past, and that's relates specifically to the reshoring of manufacturing, but critically looking also at the diversification and the protection of critical supply chains. I think the UK was very much a victim of reliance of manufacturing in the Far East for a lot of components that became an incredibly high priority during the initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are quite a few programs looking at joint investment or joint ventures with firms or organisations in the UK and the US to either reshore or shore up those supply chains to ensure that there's no lack of supply should there be any future concerns or anything similar to COVID-19. So DIT, along with its partner organisations, are committed to connecting academics, businesses and clinicians from the UK and the US. There are commercial drivers encouraging bilateral trade and investment between the two countries. However, there's also a renewed and increased focus on research and innovation. So the first bullet point is regarding, I think it's something that Paul just touched on in the last section, which is following the UK's departure from the EU, the MHRA can now set its own direction in terms of regulation for our sector. Part of this direction is for the MHRA to become internationally competitive and collaborative. For example, the MHRA either have joined or will shortly be joining the US FDA Project Orbis. Project Orbis is an initiative of the FDA Oncology Centre of Excellence and provides a framework for concurrent submission and review of oncology products among international partners from Australia, Brazil, Canada, Singapore, Switzerland, UK and the US. And the primary aim of that is to fast-track patient access. So that's one example of how the MHRA will be developing, becoming more international and more collaborative, which is something not entirely possible before we'd exited from the EU.
So Tom, hey, this is Alan. I hate to interrupt, but we're starting to get behind. Can I get you to wind up so we can try and keep this on track, because it's a pretty packed agenda today, if you don't mind. Apologise.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So if I move on very quickly, there's I don't know if Autumn still wants to touch on the BioBridge, just to give a short overview.
Sure. So the UK TMC BioBridge is a strategic partnership that we launched with the Texas Medical Center here in Houston a couple years ago. And the goal of this is to facilitate and accelerate both research as well as innovation by partnering organizations in the UK with TMC and member institutions like Houston Methodist. So we have created this partnership that gives UK companies access to the Accelerator program, which we'll talk about later, as well as co-working space and, like I said, access to member institutions like Houston Methodist. So we'll touch upon that later, so we can move on from that, Tom.
All right, so thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Tom. The last presenter in this section is Richard Hebden, who's going to talk about Innovate UK. Richard.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. I will just wait for, there we go. I can now share screen. Great. Okay.
We have it.
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I kind of skipped my intro earlier, but my name's Richard Hebden. I'm Interim Deputy Director of Health and Life Sciences at Innovate UK, which is a pretty broad area covering health, healthcare, life sciences, agriculture and food. And thank you for whoever's just expanded my my screen for me. I'm just going to say a few words about Innovate UK, and then I'm just going to give you a couple of example programs that we've run recently that may be of interest. So Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency. Since April 2018, we've been part of UK research and innovation alongside our partners, the research councils, including the Medical Research Council and others, which invest in the UK's research infrastructure and ecosystem, whereas Innovate UK's role is focused on industry-led innovation. So our mission is around driving UK productivity and economic new ideas. And we connect businesses to the people that help them, fund businesses and research collaborations in all economic sectors, value chains and UK regions to accelerate innovation. So in a sense, from this quite busy slide, which gives us a snapshot view of the funding and support that we provide to businesses, if you take away only three things about Innovate UK today, effectively we fund, we connect and we collaborate. So we fund through our grant funding mechanisms, through our Innovate UK loans arm, which provides finance for later stage innovation, through investor partnerships where we work closely with VCs, angels and other private investors to deliver funded programs, and through the SBRI, the Small Business Research Initiative program, modeled on the US SBIR equivalent, which enables government to procure research and innovation. So we connect through our organisations, our centres and networks, so through the catapults and centres, like the Agritech centres, and through our sister organisation, the Knowledge Transfer Network. And now also providing connecting and support services through our new Innovate UK Edge team, and this provides specialist innovation and growth advice support, as well as a range of other innovation services to business. And then finally, we collaborate through our network of catapults and centres directly with industry. So in the health space, we have the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult and the Medicines Discovery Catapult, and also the Centre for Process Innovation, which is part of our High Value Manufacturing Catapult, which are expert centres designed to take forward promising new technology towards market. This is just a snapshot of some of the funding opportunities that we provide. A lot of our recent investment in UK businesses and innovation infrastructure has gone through the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, part of the former Industrial Strategy. And we've invested heavily in a lot of the infrastructure required to take forward things like the early diagnosis of disease, advanced therapies manufacturing, and also to focus on areas like healthy aging as well. So this just provides a view of all of the innovation we put into healthcare to date since we began in 2007. These are figures up to January 2020, so they'll need a little bit of updating, but as of then we'd invested nearly £1.2 billion in the innovation ecosystem in the UK. A large proportion of this, as you can see in blue, went to our catapults and centres. But if you break it down by industry sector, I'd say pharma and biotech have probably been the largest beneficiary of funding, followed by precision medicine and diagnostics, health tech, about which we're quite concerned today, and also healthy aging, independent living, and biosciences. So a pretty substantial contribution to the UK innovation system. So I'm just going to switch fire for a minute and talk about two programs. I'm very grateful to my colleagues Chris Sawyer and Chris Geary. Chris Geary, no stranger to Texas, I'm told, Chris and Chris have both been involved in delivering the Digital Health Technology Catalyst, which was a funding program which came out of the Accelerated Access Review, a UK government review and report a few years ago, where they recommended the establishment of a digital health technology catalyst to accelerate the development of digital health technologies. And this has delivered £35 million in funding over 4 years through the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. And it's really aimed to address specific market failures to grow the digital health sector and deliver transformative, cost-effective technologies to patients more quickly. In terms of activities and outcomes, say 35 million allocated to date, 144 projects funded involving 150 plus businesses, 55 National Health Service organisations, 44 universities. They've delivered 5 masterclasses in digital health and worked with set up the NICE data labs. And this has had some really positive effects on employment, reductions in cost of healthcare delivery and so forth, as you can see. I'll just also mention briefly the Fast Start programme. So in response to COVID-19 last year, the Innovate UK set up the Fast Start programme to make awards of grants up to £50,000 to small businesses to help them respond to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And these were businesses across the whole spectrum of the UK economic sector. So people involved in music festivals, social distancing, education, fashion and retail, maternal care and sport. And out of the 900 companies that were funded, around a third of those were involved in digital health and care innovations. And I've just included the example of Vital Signs Solutions and their PopDoc product, which was set up by Steve and Kieran Roast, where they recognised early in March 2020 that rapid testing for COVID-19 for antibodies and then later antigen tests would need to be widely available for self-testing at home and other locations. And the existing technology at the time, lateral flow tests, were basically just analog pieces of plastic, which meant getting the data from them and doing things with it very, very difficult, if not really impossible. So they adapted the PopDoc app, which enables smartphone-based blood testing for cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and adapted this to develop an app-based digital platform to digitize COVID-19 rapid test results. And that's really, really taken off over the past year. We've been really, really happy and proud to be able to support this kind of innovation. Finally, just a quick shout out to the Global Business Innovation Program. So I mentioned in one of my earlier slides that one of the ways we work is also internationally. And one of the ways we do that is through delivering expert missions and business innovation programs in conjunction with our global team and DIT and other partners. And this is really about helping ambitious UK businesses to virtually explore and exploit collaboration, growth, and innovation opportunities. And in this case, in North America and in data and digital health. And it enables companies to really start to build up detailed market knowledge, gain introductions and cultural insights that find it difficult to obtain themselves. And I mean, under usual times, we'd love to take everybody over to Texas and other parts of the US, but unfortunately, at the moment, it's still virtual. But we're working with science innovation staff at the UK embassies in the US to arrange meetings and activities to better understand and maximize the opportunities. And one of the things that we're hoping to get out of our interactions and long-standing relationship with Texas and Houston Methodist will be to really take this forward and build on it in the future. So that concludes my presentation from today. Thanks very much for your attention. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. If you'd like to get in touch with anything, if anything struck a chord today, you'd like to learn more about it, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Autumn or our DIT or Innovate UK Edge colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Richard. Well, we will jump straight into our next session. If you need to take a break, we'll allow it. Just make sure you're muted, but we'll go ahead and jump into our next session if we've got Emily on the line. Emily leads the community and network engagement at TMC Innovation, and I work closely with her from the BioBridge. So Emily, when you're on, it'd be great to get a little bit of an overview and some context, and if we have time to ask you some questions and pick your brain about some of the ways that companies work with TMC Innovation.
And while they bring Emily in there, I just want to update everyone again. Remember, we're running this in Hopin. There's a very good chat that's happening in Hopin right now. We've got a lot of companies, a lot of people with some useful resources and support, so please jump on there when you can. And I believe we have Emily now.
Yes, hi Stuart, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for participating.
Of course, delighted to be with you all.
So we'd love to learn more about what's happening over at the TMC Innovation Institute in the UK-US BioBridge program.
Perfect. So the Texas Medical Center, as Dr. Lunsden and Autumn already alluded to, is this collection. It's a physical location and a geography, but it's also an organization that seeks to support collaboration between our wonderful member institutions that deliver great care to patients, 10 million of them per year, and do phenomenal research to push the boundaries of innovation in healthcare every day. So our team is really looking to ensure that we are providing resources and frameworks to support collaboration between these amazing innovators and healthcare delivery professionals, as well as provide a pathway and a place where people can come to Houston, get connected, have a place to land, have resources like wet lab space and access to talent and other things that they may need to be successful as they form relationships with our partners here in the Texas Medical Center. So backing up a bit, I'm just going to drop a link in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone can see it, but I'll add it to Hopin later if not. So the main thing that we want everybody to know about us at the Texas Medical Center is that we're here to support journeys of collaboration with each of our partners. We're delighted to partner with Autumn and the rest of Innovate UK and the DIT to have a pathway for companies coming from the United Kingdom to have a place to build collaborations here in the medical center. So with that, I think Autumn and I are going to have a quick discussion here about the ways that we work together and make things happen for UK companies. We've already had several success stories, many of which you'll start to hear from later today. And we're delighted to continue building relationships on this BioBridge to support companies coming from the UK into the Texas Medical Center. So Autumn is my fantastic counterpart that we work together here on building this bridge together. And she's really a great resource for UK companies that are looking to get connected here with us at the Texas Medical Center. So Autumn, if you could share a little bit more about how you think about bringing companies and how we work together in building new relationships here.
Sure, thanks, Emily. So as I mentioned earlier, the UK TMC BioBridge was a partnership that we launched with TMC to really facilitate and expedite that entry for UK companies. Through that, we've been able to expand on those relationships and work with Houston Methodist, for example, to really get those companies involved with the clinicians, getting validation studies, pilot studies, and really just R&D in general. This gives really great access to clinical champions and learn how the UK innovation fits in with the US health setting. But Emily, I would really like to ask you a couple questions too. And there have been a couple of changes over the years with the programming that you have at TMC Innovation. So can you tell us a little bit about how the Accelerator program works, what other programs that you've got to support companies and early research in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Accelerator is really our flagship program, the one that most people know us for, and the one that's the best pathway for UK companies to access the resources that we can provide. So the Accelerator used to be a curriculum-based, cohort-based, demo day-based, showcase of companies. And we did have some great companies come through. We were able to share more about the US reimbursement landscape and provide mentorship and access to different resources. And that was what the first 5 years of the Accelerator looked like. Back in 2019, we really reflected on how we were doing and what we could do better, and really went on a journey to understand how we could be a better partner to both our startups, but also to our member institutions like Houston Methodist. And so through that process, we really reevaluated how we do diligence on companies before, during, and after they go through the program to understand who is on the best pathway for partnership. That means that the TMCX program Accelerator that we have now is really ultra focused on making sure that each of the companies that we work with is on a pathway toward a pilot, a clinical validation study, a preclinical study, or other implementation with Houston Methodist or one of our other health system partners. And so this provides a really great lens for us to perform diligence on each of the companies that we work with and provide insight, feedback on how to best facilitate new relationships with our partners. It also means that for companies coming into the program now, that each of you can expect that we're going to be providing a much more clear route to engaging with our partners and a pathway that is going to hopefully be successful in a sustainable long-term relationship that benefits both parties in this case. So those are some of the new changes. I would say some of the things that have stayed the same is still, access to office space, hundreds of clinical and business mentors that are working alongside of the companies to help prepare them for not only clinical, relationship development conversations, but also fundraising and other strategic business milestones. We have a fantastic relationship with the J Labs here on site for wet lab space for any of those who need it. We also have this great new prototyping facility to build on the amazing legacy of medical device innovation here in Houston. So when we think about partnering with companies through the Accelerator, it's of course that initial business relationship, but we also look to expand into talent and resources and footprint and other things that companies really can leverage to be even more successful here in the US. The Accelerator is one of a few programs that we run here. So we form new companies. We have this new cancer therapeutics Accelerator that we just launched this year for Texas-based companies. And we're also looking to start some new programs here next year as well. So when you come to the Texas Medical Center, you become part of an entire community that's really looking to support healthcare startups along their entire journey. And you'll be part of the cookie factory community, as we like to say, because we're sitting in an old Nabisco cookie factory where people still comment on how they used to be able to smell chocolate chip cookies when they drove by. So it's a pretty cool space that we're really activating with some incredibly talented individuals that are all building something important for the future of healthcare.
Thanks so much. So because you do work with so many of the member institutions, have you seen any trends that are starting to come out or be identified as needs of US healthcare systems and what might be able to plug in from our UK innovation?
Yeah, I think that some of the places that we've seen where the UK companies have particular advantage is just around value-based healthcare. We're still seeing some shifts to that across the US in different ways. Also, chronic care management has handled differently in the UK, and some companies have really made leaps and bounds over what could be expected of US companies just because of our incentive structures aren't really aligned there yet. I think my favorite trend that I'm seeing is really the focus on the patient as a consumer and really looking at how we can make that patient journey and patient experience really more delightful for each person that comes into the health system, and is definitely something top of mind for us in the Texas Medical Center as well. How can we work together with our partners to make the experience of getting healthcare more simple, easier to access, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate with our UK counterparts on things like that, and we've started to see that trending here as well, autumn this past year.
And then regarding the BioBridge, how has that played a role in identifying companies? Because I know you've got some BioBridges with some other countries as well. So how has that supported TMC innovation in actually sourcing new technology?
Yeah, so we invite companies from around the world to apply. So it's certainly not limited to our BioBridge partnered countries. And we do have 3 BioBridges now, which is pretty exciting for us. I think that the key advantage of BioBridge companies is twofold. The first is that through our BioBridge partners, we do have a better context as to what a value proposition from a UK company is, thanks to conversations that Autumn and I are having all the time. So for example, we can be educated by Autumn about how a company moving from trust to trust really would mimic some of the growth that we look to be seeing here in the US. And that's a nuance that maybe the company themselves wouldn't articulate and wouldn't know that that's the value proposition that we're looking for. But that's a place where through discussions with Autumn, we can really understand where the traction in the UK can map really well to what we're expecting to see here in the US and in the TMC. I think the other main component is that once companies do come and participate in the Accelerator, we also have the opportunity to leverage the DIT network to help expand upon what we're looking to do as well. So it's more resources, more collaboration, more network to access. And again, we work collaboratively with Autumn once the companies are here to ensure that we're working together toward our shared goals. So I think the key components would be really understanding that value proposition in the UK and how it might translate here in the US, as well as continuing to activate on relationship building once the companies are here. And that makes the UK companies really stand out among all the rest of the international applicants.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate your time today. Stuart, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you all. So our next speaker is Dr. Caroline Coleman-Davies, and she actually leads the Texas Strategy Program for Swansea University. So I know we have been talking a bit more industrial integration over here at the TMC, but what about academia? How do we bring in UK academics from different institutes? I myself actually started my role over here and my journey over here when I was 22. I was actually studying a master's over in the Republic of Ireland in Dublin, came across an academic program, ended up at Rice University, and I've pretty much been here ever since. So when I heard that the likes of Swansea University were doing something very similar, I thought, what a fantastic opportunity. And this program that Caroline is going to talk to you about, I believe has been in existence for about approximately 10 years and has been funneling over PhD students, other researchers, etc. And one of my close colleagues, actually, Dr. Matthew Ware, who done a postdoc in my lab, he actually went through this program. So Caroline is going to talk to you about this unique Swansea Houston Methodist partnership that we have ongoing. Caroline, over to you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Stuart. I think I can now see myself twice. I'm hoping that you can all see me okay.
Yes, coming in loud and clear.
Excellent. And can you see my slides okay?
No slides, just yourself and your backdrop.
Oh, okay. Right, okay, bear with me. Let's see if we can get those slides up.
There we have them.
We got any? Lovely, you got them now, super. Thank you
Could
very
just
much
go
indeed.
full screen on that, on those slides. There we go, perfect.
Right. Lovely. Well, thank you very much to you, Stuart, for that introduction, and thank you to Houston Methodist for inviting me to speak with you today. And good afternoon from Swansea. Good morning to you all there. As Stuart has said, my name's Caroline Coleman-Davis, and I head up Swansea University's Texas Strategic Partnership. So I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes telling you a little bit about that partnership. It originated with the UK-Texas Collaborative, which I'm sure some of you will remember. Some of you may have actually been part of that partnership. It was started in 2002. Swansea joined in 2006, and it was essentially an initiative designed to bring together experts from biomedicine, nanotechnology and informatics in order to find solutions to some of the greatest health challenges of our time, so things like cancer and heart disease. As a result of that partnership, Swansea established really strong collaborations with a number of partners in Texas, and our relationship with Houston Methodist really started there. And as a result, we decided to grow that partnership. So instead of just letting it wither, we decided to develop it into a multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary, multi-institution partnership, which now encompasses 8 Texas institutions. 5 of those are in Houston, so Houston Methodist, Baylor College of Medicine, Rice University, University of Houston, and UT Health Science Center at Houston. And we've also got University of Texas at Austin, Texas A&M University, and University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston. The aim of the partnership is to develop collaborations in research, teaching, and student engagement, which are meaningful, sustainable, and mutually beneficial. This isn't about developing collaborations just for the sake of collaborations. It's all about developing collaborations that have a point, that have a purpose. For us, that they bring benefit to our academic community, so whether that's researchers or academics or students. And of course, they need to bring benefit to our partner as well. The range of collaborative activities we've got in Texas is huge, and so there are too many to talk about in just 10 minutes, but just to give you a snapshot of some of the kinds of activity we've got, we have joint projects, joint papers, publications, grant applications and conferences. And if you're joining us from a university, you'll know that paper publication is a key measure of success and is also really important for generating funding. And in the last 10 years, we've produced over 300 papers with our Texas partners, and they've been cited over 33,000 times. We've also got joint appointments. We run research seminars, both in Swansea and in Texas. We have research showcases and demonstrations. We work to support our researchers to commercialize their research in Texas. And then we have sharing of best practice, facilities, and experimental data. So a huge amount going on. We also have teaching initiatives. So there's a joint PhD. More on that in a couple of moments. We also have shared courses, so what we would call in the UK modules, where students from both Swansea and Texas actually join the same course from their home university but work together. We also have teaching visits and guest lectures, sometimes just one guest lecture, sometimes a teaching visit of several weeks or several months. And then we have joint student projects and events. So again, bringing students together, but from their home university. So working sort of virtually together. So working internationally, but from home. And then we have student mobility. We have a big emphasis at Swansea on giving every student the opportunity to spend time abroad as part of their degree. So with our Texas partners, we have reciprocal exchange programs where students can study for a semester or a full academic year. And because it's reciprocal, they don't pay any tuition fees to the host university. They just pay their usual fee to their home university. We also have summer placements, student placements, dissertation placements. We have summer programs and we have faculty-led visits. So I'm working with one of our Texas partners at the moment to arrange them to visit Swansea for a month next summer, and they're going to bring about 30 students with them. In total, we've exchanged around 300 students with our Texas partner institutions in the last 9 years. And if you know anything about student mobility, that's a really significant number. And I should say that we're really grateful to the support of the British American Foundation of Texas, which actually provides scholarships for Swansea students to study in Texas and Texan students to study in Swansea. Now, I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about some of our collaborations in the Texas Medical Center, most of which are with Houston Methodist, just to put a bit more meat on the bones, really. We've got collaborations with more than 50 Houston Methodist researchers, and you'll see there I've chosen a photo with almost everyone, where almost everyone's got their eyes closed. I'm sure you'll agree that's a magnificent picture, but what you've actually got there is the heads of institution and also the Welsh Government Education Minister who visited Houston Methodist as part of a visit to the US. The kinds of collaborations we've got with Houston Methodist are many and varied, but include things like topics such as cell-based therapeutics and targeted drug delivery, cartilage repair and regeneration, so looking, for example, at tissue engineering solutions to stimulate cartilage regrowth, and methods to better monitor and understand retinal development and degeneration. We also have a collaborative PhD, which Stuart has also already mentioned, and that's a co-funded PhD where students spend their first year at Swansea, so they essentially do their research training and get their academic grounding with us at Swansea, and then they come to Houston Methodist for their second and third years, where they join a research team, undertake their doctoral project, and really get the opportunity to work in a research environment that's unlike no other. So that's a really spectacular opportunity, and it provides some of the brightest and best students that Swansea has got to Houston Methodist, where they get opportunities that we couldn't necessarily offer them at Swansea. So that's where we see the mutual benefit coming in. We've also brought to the TMC some of our medical innovations. So these are some educational trauma simulation models that have been designed by a trauma surgeon from Swansea. And the aim is to give students, and in this case, medical residents, sort of hands-on experience of dealing with trauma and traumatic bleeding. I mean, what that picture doesn't capture is the spurting arterial blood. But you'll see that they're pretty lifelike, and so they were brought over, and that sort of expertise was shared with colleagues here in the TMC. And then for a number of years, there's a familiar face for you there. For a number of years, we have been fortunate enough to be able to bring students to, again, the TMC to participate in a summer innovation program where they were tasked with developing medical devices. So one year it was developing devices to monitor and really prevent pressure ulcers. Another year it was about developing implantable artificial lungs. And so again, it's giving students a fantastic experience, extending their skills and networks, and then also bringing their expertise to a research team over in the TMC, and that team then benefits from their research and their ideas. What we know from the feedback from students who've participated in all these sorts of experiences is that it's truly life-changing for them. How have we done all this? How do you build a successful partnership? Well, as you might guess from the range of partners we work with and the range of activities we've undertaken, there isn't really one model and one size fits all, but the sort of fundamental principles really are about identifying where there are foundations upon which you can build and where there is potential to grow. And that's something that we were able to identify through the Texas UK Collaborative. We've also worked really hard to identify opportunities to collaborate and also create opportunities. So sometimes it's generated from either us or the Texas partner. Sometimes it's about identifying third-party opportunities. And we've worked hard to build networks so that we can bring the right people together when they need to. The underpinning values for the partnership have been about sharing, reciprocity, and trust. Very little money changes hands between us and our Texas partners. It is not designed as an income generation tool. So we're not looking to generate income from our Texas partners. We might well work together to leverage income from elsewhere, but we really, where we can, will share expertise, lab facilities, data. So it is very much about sharing. And then the reciprocity underpins things like the student exchanges, where the students essentially swap places. So again, there isn't money paid. And then the third element really that underpins a successful relationship and a successful partnership is knowing each other really well. And I don't think that can be understated. We've worked really hard to get to know our partners well, to get to know who they are, what they're doing and what they want to do, what their strategy is, what they want to achieve and how we can help them achieve that, knowing what they're good at and we're not so good at and vice versa, understanding where they're going and what they want to do and how we can help, and also understanding the interrelationships between them. And then regular engagement is really key. Obviously, travel hasn't been so easy recently, but regular engagement in whatever way you can rather than sporadic engagement. How can I work with you and how can I help you? Well, just to end, I can help with connections and introductions. I'm happy to share any expertise that we have, any best practice that we have, and to discuss with any of you any collaboration ideas that you have or ideas for student engagements. I'd be very happy to visit with you. So for those of you who are in Texas, next time I am allowed to come, I would be delighted to visit with you. Or if you would like to visit with us in Swansea, I'd be very happy to help facilitate that. And so please get in touch with me. There's my email address. I've got a booth so you can register your details, log your details at the booth, or you can come and visit with me in that booth later on today. So thank you very much. I hope that you found that useful and I hope to speak to some of you later.
Well, Caroline, thank you very much for your participation and also for sponsoring the event. You know, I always love when you come over because you bring over a big goodie bag for me, usually filled with mint arrows, the odd pot noodle and some Monster Munch. So maybe next time a bottle of Iron Brew would be fantastic. So as we go into the next part of this session, we would love to hear more about what we can offer here at Houston Methodist for both academics and industry. And on that note, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Lumsden.
Thank you, Stuart. It's been a very exciting morning so far. One of the words you've heard frequently is Houston Methodist, and so let me try and qualify where we think we deserve some of that attention. And if I can have my slides up, because I'm going to show you what we typically do in medicine when we're giving a presentation and we show basically our conflicts. But I will show it with a difference, because I think these conflicts are important. We're not really interested in having a traditional vendor-client relationship. We want a partnership. And these are examples basically of three big companies that we have very deep partnerships, albeit with the certain controls that have to be on top of that. And I'll come back and talk about the Siemens relationship in particular, and perhaps as a model of how companies can work with us. I touched a little bit earlier on when we were ad-libbing, when Paul was in the Matrix, a little bit about Texas Medical Center. And here's this guy we're talking about, Monroe Dunaway Anderson. He created this massive area in the city, and this is an aerial view of Texas Medical Center and the multiple different institutions that actually all work together here. When I moved down to Houston, I worked for Baylor College of Medicine, who had been partnered with Houston Methodist Hospital for nearly 50 years. Unfortunately, 2 years after I arrived, what is referred to here as the divorce occurred. Here were two organizations 8th ranked medical school in the United States, one of the top hospitals in the United States, and one of the wealthiest hospitals in the United States. Houston Methodist is a private hospital that sits on about a $3 billion endowment. We really run the Bank of Methodist that dabbles in healthcare on the side. That all of a sudden these two partners completely came apart. It was referred to as this messy medical center divorce, and it basically took this partnership, which nobody in the city thought was going to break up, and it actually occurred. What happened then overnight at Methodist Hospital, and the reason for giving you this is to give you some of the context of why there are so many exciting things that are occurring here at the moment. Overnight in Methodist, there were no medical students, no residents, no training programs, no organization for creating training programs, no research labs, no innovation, and oh, by the way, Methodist had never employed a doctor. And what's been done here, and that was 14 years ago, what's been done here in 14 years is truly unbelievable. We now employ 800 faculty. We have built nearly 50 training programs. We have created a research institute where you're going to hear about the training centers that we've built. And so out of what appeared to be a catastrophic event, essentially we were given a blank sheet of paper and allowed to rebuild an organization from the ground up. That doesn't come your way very often, and was an opportunity that I think what it did was attract people who are a little bit entrepreneurial and who are willing to basically take some risks in terms of rebuilding the organization. So Methodist, you've heard, sits in the middle of Texas Medical Center, this big area. And these are just some of the statistics. I'm not going to spend time going through them, but you already heard 10 million patient visits a year. If we look at the number of surgeries just done in this area, 180,000. Open heart surgeries, nearly 14,000. And so if you're looking for partners with high patient flow, again, when you run a clinical trial, what you want is enrollment in that clinical trial. And this is an area basically that has a target-rich environment, both in terms of people to work with and in terms of our ability to enroll in these trials. We are very proud of our legacy. The reason that I came to Houston was really because of this guy. This is Dr. Michael DeBakey, and he essentially created much of the cardiovascular enterprise. Methodist is best known for the cardiovascular enterprise. I took over the running the Heart and Vascular Center after Dr. DeBakey, and we're incredibly proud of that. The other thing that happens in Texas Medical Center is competition. These are private hospitals, by and large, that compete with one another. So Dr. DeBakey's on the left, pretty busy operating room. This is Dr. Cooley, Dr. Denton Cooley. It was another world-renowned cardiac surgeon. He was right next door, connected with the tunnel, and they competed with one another, so you had to have a lot more people, in the operating room. And sometimes this competition didn't work out so well. They were both featured on the front of Life magazine when Dr. Cooley stole Dr. DeBakey's artificial heart, and a lot of controversy around that. Sometimes we can push the boundaries in research a little too far. Implanting an artificial heart with no FDA approval, IRB approval, that was really not good. That doesn't really happen here anymore. But if you look in Dr. DeBakey's operating room and you look up above him, there's a guy on a stand with a large TV camera. And then up above that, you can see some legs. These were the viewing domes where people would come in to watch Dr. DeBakey at work. But he was on the forefront of showing people what could be done basically in medical education. This is the new tower that we just opened. So in the last 10 years, we've bought 2 hospitals, built 2 hospitals, built a research institute, and built this incredible cardiovascular neurological center with a new tower about to go up right next door to it. So things have happened here very rapidly. And I think it's because of the leadership that was in place and who subsequently took over the running of this organization. And so we are hungry. And we want to keep this massive trajectory. We're now the top-ranked hospital in Texas. We are in the top 20 hospitals called the Honor Roll Hospital in the United States. The Heart and Vascular Center here, named after Dr. DeBakey, is the top-ranked Heart and Vascular Center in Texas also, and we're ranked currently 12th in the United States, and we're coming up fast. This is my operating room. We're going to go through this and just show you. To the left, as you look at, is the Research Institute. This is where a lot of the research and the innovation takes place. And the center is this new cardiovascular tower where I operate and take care of patients on a daily basis. What is fundamentally different here really is I believe that proximity equals productivity. And overlaying this is this Siemens relationship. We have the most advanced cardiovascular imaging in the world. We are totally connected with an audiovisual integration system that I can let you in the UK watch what's going on in these operating rooms. And basically we have, it's also adjacent to the most advanced, and I'll show you examples of this, hands-on training centre. And that hands-on training centre doubles as a centre for innovation. And so all of this is within walking distance really from where we're sitting here, you know, in the studio at the moment. Other centres have these components but are completely geographically separate. For example, the Skirball Centre associated with Columbia up in New York City. So my mantra is proximity equals productivity. What we have lacked until recently was a medical school. And remember, this is a private hospital, and so we now basically have initiated I think one of the most exciting concepts in the United States, and we call it EnMed. It stands for Engineering and Medicine. It's headed up by a friend of mine that I used to work with in Atlanta, Rod Pettigrew, and essentially this is a dual-track degree program where the students, first of all, you've got to be an engineer to be allowed into this program. You've got to be an engineer interested in innovation. They will be taught an innovation at the same time they will rotate on the clinical services here at Methodist. But during that process, they got to identify unmet clinical need, and they got to bring that to fruition along basically with their faculty mentors. So what we're trying to do is create the leadership for these startup companies and the innovators really of the future. We like to tell our story. This is how this audiovisual integration works. It lets us broadcast and showcase your products to major medical symposia around the world. And this is one of the larger ones called Viva in the Las Vegas. And this is us from our operating room at the touch of a switch. We don't need to bring in satellite trucks. We want to showcase and tell our story of what's going on here. Let me touch base on this relationship with Siemens because it's very important to us. We are the biggest Siemens install in the world in terms of imaging equipment, but it is a multi-dimensional relationship. Number one, it is a commercial relationship. Number two, we have Siemens research scientists embedded in our organization who participate in cases and test their equipment. And number three is we have a research and development program in which we allocate, a significant amount of money each year. You've got to have a Siemens scientist working with a Methodist faculty member with a funding which goes to not to basic science but to some product that Siemens potentially can leverage down the line. And this has been a very interesting way of getting people to work together and focusing on translational research. That's an oft-used word but particularly important to us. And our entire research organization and our entire training organization is directed towards supporting the clinical centers of excellence and bringing these things as fast as we can to bedside. There's just a few examples of the PR really that surrounded this announcement of this Siemens relationship. MIghty, you've heard a little bit about, you're going to hear some more. This stands for the Methodist Institute for Technology, Innovation and Education. This is featured in our recent publication called Methodology, and it really shows, the equipment and the resources that we have here are really second to none. This is probably the best hands-on training and simulation center that I believe exists really anywhere in the world. And again, all of the models which we use for training can also be dovetailed into testing new devices, as can basically the imaging equipment which we have here. And I'm just going to go on through this. It really just emphasizes, because I took over the leadership of this last year, and how we're trying to align all of this to support our clinical centers of excellence. And Stuart's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the innovation projects and the newer ideas around robotics and using virtual reality that we're integrating into that. I want to, as I start closing, talk to you about something I alluded to early on about innovation. And this was trying to leverage other resources that are here in the city. And we started this concept called pumps and pipes, heart and vascular system, what is done through working through long, thin tubes. And this is our initial logo that we utilized of this blood vessel which morphed into a pipeline. And why did we come up with this? In the vascular world is a great example of how it should be done. Laser Greenfield was a surgeon who worked at University of Michigan, and he had treated a patient who had been in a motor vehicle accident, and 3 days later he dropped dead from a blood clot which formed in his legs and ended up in his lungs. Now, he was having dinner that night with this guy called Garmin Kimmel. They were drinking wine, they should have been drinking scotch, but despite that, innovation can still occur. And he was explaining to Kimmel basically that he lost this patient, and Kimmel said, how did it happen? He explained about the tubes coming out of the legs, one tube going to the heart, and Kimmel said, well, why don't you put a filter in that tube coming out of the legs? He said, well, nobody's ever put a filter in a blood vessel. And he said, well, we do it in the oil and gas business all the time. And so Laser Greenfield said, you mean like put a sieve in it? He said, no, you can't put a sieve in a pipeline. It'll block the whole pipeline off. You need to exploit laminar flow, fastest flow acceleration, the center line. You need to have a conical shaped filter. And that really was what was developed. But the third piece of this puzzle was this guy called John Abele. John Abele was one of the founders of Boston Scientific. And so you had the physician who identified the problem, the engineer who helped solve the problem, and the business guy who could take that and build it basically into one of the leading medical device companies in the world. And what he always said is you look at a problem and you try to connect it with other areas which may have nothing to do with the problem that you're working on. And that's really what we were trying to do really with pumps and pipes. So I'm running out of time a little bit. This is another example basically of Texas Medical Center. And if you look in, my office is right in the middle of that. And when you look from that, you actually look over to Rice Stadium. And in Rice Stadium, two things happened. One you will have no idea about because that was Super Bowl VIII. But the other one was that's where John F. Kennedy gave the famous moonshot speech. And why do we go to the moon? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And he actually, in handwritten note, he scribbled in, why does Rice, because they don't have a very good football team, play the University of Texas? Because they're going to get their butt kicked. But that's what's going to make them better. Now, I don't really have time to show you this video. I do want to feature two other things. Norway, the Norwegians have always been involved in pumps and pipes. They got funding from the Norwegian government to actually fund 5 startup projects. We went over there and helped launch this. They don't have much of a space industry, but what they did have is a big oil and gas business. And so, for example, if you look at that bed that's in the middle, that bed curls up and forms basically a semicircle which cradles a patient, and then the bed rocks, and it's designed basically to try and prevent pressure ulcers from forming. That was developed from a pipe handling robot that would actually curl around a pipe and transport large 30 feet lengths of pipes. And so they've also developed simulation technology for modeling flow in the vascular system, which was completely taken out of how they model flow in various different components of a subsurface area. Another example of inter-industry collaboration, some great pictures. This is the tank which exists down at the Johnson Space Center, where not only do they train divers or astronauts, they also train divers who are going subsurface, and they use a lot of the training techniques that have been used really for astronauts. I don't have time to go through this, but here's an example. Luca Parmitano, he was the Italian astronaut whose cooling system ruptured and he almost drowned in space. This was the most widely watched thing that came out of pumps and pipes. And this is an example of Billy Cohen. He's one of the foremost inventors around here. He just exited 3 different startup companies, and the first time he showed his magnetic device for creating AV fistula was at pumps and pipes. So I'm not going to go through this because I want to try and get us back on time. There's also been use of our imaging equipment to model flow in completion well bores. This is actually published in Petroleum Engineering, and this was an example of a patient that they brought in to put inside our magnet so they can actually model that flow. I'm going to transition now really onto Stuart and talk about robotics. This is a great picture. This is a surgical robot with a NASA robot running the surgical robot. Wouldn't be me that patient would be operating on, but it does remind me to segue this on, and Stuart's going to tell you about Mirren.
Thank you, Dr. Lumsden. Before I start this, I just want to put it out there. Okay, imagine a hospital where the only people in the hospital were the patients themselves. Thinking that in the back of your head as I go through this, okay? So here at Houston Methodist Hospital, we have pretty much every single FDA-approved robotic system you can imagine, ranging from DaVinci, Maser X systems. We use a lot of TCD, for example, here in the cardiovascular department. And also we have these imaging capabilities, which Dr. Lumsden was discussing. So how do we pull all this together? How do we advance it, evolve it, under a context of, for example, a smart hospital, or that robotic hospital that I talked about earlier? Okay, Siemens brought this white paper out talking about the future hospital. What does the hospital of 2025 look like? Like, why can't you go in there with all this smart technology? You know, if it's too cold for you, turn up the heat. If you want to get access to Wi-Fi, you can. If you want your digital record access, you can. But what about autonomous robotic hardware in there as well? So that's where we came up with MIRIN. So it's the Methodist Institute for Robotics and Image Guided Navigation. Okay, one of our objectives is to list all the procedures that we currently do, build up a big database, but identify new needs. Look at procedures that you want to use robotics for that just aren't used for that. And if there's no robotic system that exists, let's build one. Let's invent it from the ground up. And to that end, we actually have a couple of grants ongoing at the moment, and these are artificial intelligence-based awards. One is with M&S Bionics, it's an NIH STTR grant, and they're about interoperative analytics and enhanced patient outcomes. So, mitigating surgical retention of tools inside the patient, eliminating waste and surgical instrument utilization, and understanding the data behind how surgeons utilize these instruments from case to case. We also have another really nice grant with Inform AI. It's one of our local companies here in Houston, Houston born and bred, and that's looking at medical imaging classifiers. Okay, so it's AI tools to optimize organ transplantation. So if you have a liver available, or a heart, or a lung, how do you know to put it into the best patient? Like who is the best patient for that liver, lung, and heart, etc. We're using AI to help us make that case, to help us make that prediction. And this is a little example here, again, of M&S working in Mighty. Again, we're all gearing up. We have, I believe it's Dr. Rahimi is about to come in there. And this is us doing a case. It's a cadaver study. We're doing a carotid endarterectomy. And all those instruments that you see there have little RFID tags. So we know what those instruments are at any one point in time. We know who's utilizing them. And more importantly, we know if they've been left in the patient or if they've been dropped on the floor afterwards, etc. Now, recently we had a Dr. Ovidio there, Rodolfo Given. He gave this massive comprehensive robotic surgery skills lab over at Mighty. This was amazing. We had all these people in the room, obviously obeying the COVID policy laws and restrictions, and we had the DaVinci system in there with a porcine model. This was a whole day, and we are doing this again and again and again. So if you're a robotic company out there in the UK, for example, CMR Surgical, okay, and you want to get into the US health system, we have a path for you. We can bring it in, we can do the FDA pre-approval, etc. But please reach out to us. Now, who are we collaborating with? Like, who are our partners in making this happen? So, obviously we have DaVinci Systems here. We're currently working with ABB Robotics, who are a robotic company just set up shop there at the TMC Innovation Institute. We have our Pumps and Pipes network, which Dr. Lumsden was talking about. And we have examples CDI at TMC, that's the Johnson & Johnson Centre for Device Innovation. We have an army of medical students who are engineers in the form of NMed. We have Rice next door, we have NASA down the street. So these are all partners that we're working with to drive MIRIN, to drive this use of autonomous robotic hardware and systems. And again, here's another view there of a robot controlling a robot, and this was from our Pumps and Pipes network. And actually, you may have seen in the studio, we actually had this lovely award here, which was given to Pumps and Pipes by the British American Business Council, and it was a Pumps and Pipes award. So I believe there we go, you saw it earlier there. So again, these great partnerships, we want to just keep them going. One brand new thing we just launched this year is called Mighty XR. It's our extended reality program. It was a real game changer last year. It was in the form of Oculus Quest 2.0, the first ever truly portable and affordable headset. For $299, you can buy this. This is a virtual reality, completely immersive environment that you're in. Okay. Again, if you wanted to buy this maybe a few years ago, you're looking at $2 to $3 grand. You need a PC, you need to be tethered, you need the base station. No, with an Oculus Quest, you just have it, whatever you want, and you can start interacting. So this is what we've done. We've got the Oculus Quest for business headsets, and we've populated it with all our partners, like software, essentially. So we have our Blausen demo, which I'm going to show you in a minute. We're working with our partners such as Endologics and Fundamental Surgery. And I'm going to give you a little quick run through of a VR demo we just had made for us. Might have trouble with audio there. Is audio coming through, guys? Yes, no? Okay, no audio, that's fine. But this is, Dr. Lumsden, you want to walk us through this?
Sure. Basically, this is a virtual auditorium. It essentially would, imagine we'd built a new tower in the middle of Texas Medical Center. You're in it and you're looking out, and guess what you're looking at? You're looking at Methodist Hospital. And so the idea is that to hold the conference, we could remote people in there. Our particular interest was really, as you can imagine, we run this huge training center, and we were denied access to it really from bringing people in last year. And so we were looking for other ways in which we could do this. And this was how we created this. So that's me in one office, and then Bruce Blouse in another office. And once you put the headset in, we are separated by 20 miles. And yet when you put the headsets on, we're suddenly both in that environment. And that's the whole concept of this, is to be able to bring people together. Now, we're testing this. We're not 100% convinced that you're going to sit in this for 2 or 3 hours, but for certain training examples that Stuart's going to show you, there's no question that this is going to play basically a major role.
Correct. And just on that note, you can see here, so what you're seeing on the screen is 15 videos and animations that we have. They're either from the Blowson Library, or they are on our DeBakey CV Education YouTube channel. And every single animation that you can click on or video, there's actually a 3D model of that organ or object of interest which comes up, and you'll see that in a second. And you can basically move that 3D object around. I'll just fast forward there. Okay, so for example, this was a tumor on the carotid artery, and Blowson took this CT MRI data, segmented it out, created this beautiful model. And think about it, this is something you could actually show a patient. You could say, look, this is the kind of procedure we're going to perform on you. And what you're seeing on the screen there, this again is just an example of a 3D rendered heart model. So you can imagine 10 people or 15 people in this room with a proctor in there, guiding them through the videos and showing different 3D animations which they can manipulate and they can turn around. And you can even have a room where you go in and you basically take part in a simulation. So on that note of simulations, we actually are working with our partners Endologics, and this is a really nice simulation. So this was made in conjunction with also VR, and Endologics are trying to train up their trainees and how to use their endograft stents, etc. And I believe Dr. Lumsden, you give a narrative on this.
Yeah,
right?
sure. So believe it or not, I'm the guy on the right side of the patient with them back to you. And the Oculus controllers become your hands. So when you look through the Oculus, you're really looking at those hands. And the device that they're training me on is on the table. And I got to control the X-ray machine. And then what happens is the proctor spirits in. That proctor happened to be in Scottsdale in Arizona, but he's standing across the table interacting with me, watching what I'm doing and telling me how to do it better and how I'm screwing it up. And so this is probably one of the first and best examples in the cardiovascular world. There are numerous that have been built for orthopedics. Clearly that's where all the money is. But for something like this where there's relatively short-term immersion, it's absolutely going to play a very valuable role.
Excellent. And the other thing we're doing, this is actually, you're going to hear more about this later, this is with a company called Verti, who very kindly sponsors this program as well. So we have all this content, okay, on our YouTube channel. We have 2D videos, and we just launched our first 360 video a couple of months ago, and already we've got over 20,000 views. So we're using that 360 video, but we're adding interactive elements into that, okay, because we want to be able to train up our residents to a certain level. So for example here, this is the Verti platform in use. Okay, again, so you got a 360 video here, it's asking a question. Is this your first 360 video experience? You answer yes, no. This is the people that are involved in the video, and just go straight into the operating room here. Here we are. So again, this is, you would interact with this in a VR headset, okay? That movement you see is my head moving around in physical reality, so I can get a complete view in 360 of the operating room. And in addition, as you're seeing there, it's a question which we're asking you. We're saying, hey, before you go on, look around, you're going to see some more things, interact with them, etc., etc. And you'll see a couple of information tags pop up there. They click on that, they learn more about Dr. Lumsden. Mm-hmm. They click on that, they learn more about the other personnel in the operating room. So you can have these anywhere. You can be learning a whole bunch of different stuff. If you want to know more about the C-arm there, you can have a little information tag there. You can also have a little bit of fun with this. Is this the best OR in the world? It might be, definitely. If you put the wrong answer in there, it might be. What do you mean it might be? You get kicked off because that's the wrong answer, okay? And being in the UK, you're left with Lord Alan Sugar saying that you're fired. So we are really, really pushing the boat on that and getting very creative. And just finally, we've also got some more extended reality platforms. This is more towards the enterprise and kind of high-level platforms. We have the Microsoft HoloLens 2.0, and we recently acquired the Vario XR3 system. So we're very looking forward to experiment with those. And this is just an example of Dr. Lumsden using the HoloLens in the operating room. Would you like to comment on that, Dr. Lumsden?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of imaging, and as I mentioned, the importance of our relationship with Siemens, but typically you sit down in front of a computer and you look at a CAT scan, and then you walk into the patient and you, in your mind, try to figure out, you know, what the anatomy is compared with that CAT scan you've just looked at. So where in this, what you can actually do is take the 3D reconstruction of the CAT scan and you can grab it and then you can walk it into the operating room and you can overlay it on top of the patient. It's not quite fused anatomically yet, but clearly that's going to come, and then we can make a decision right there where we're going to make the incision or how we're going to tackle that patient's particular problem.
Exactly, and just to end my slides here, you know, Dr. Lumsden tapped on the NMED program, and I can't highlight this enough. It's a really interesting program that's only a couple of years in. If you want to learn more about that, please go to our DeBakey CV Education channel on YouTube and type in engineering medicine. We actually ran a live show there about a month ago. So enough from me. I am going to turn it over to Homer Quintana. He is the program project manager for the Center for Rapid Device Translation.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank you, Autumn, and the rest of the organizers for putting together such a phenomenal event. So I'm here to talk about the Center for Rapid Device Translation, which has been around since late 2017 and really was an extension of the resources available to our own internal investigators out towards industry. And the mission statement of our Center for Rapid Device Translation really is focused on bringing in medical device technology that is going to make an impact on the clinical setting. And so we bring this technology and move it from the bench to the bedside with safety, accuracy, and efficiency. We leverage core competencies that are available here at the Houston Methodist Research Institute and within the Houston Methodist Hospital to really facilitate the movement of this technology very quickly. As you know, a medical device can really move through approval in a much more expedited manner than a drug or a biologic. Although we've seen great use of the emergency use authorization in vaccines, which gives me a little bit of hope that maybe we can figure out a better process to move that forward. But as I mentioned, we're really focused on bringing this technology in and leveraging these resources, the biggest of which I would say is our access to key opinion leaders or clinical champions, such as Dr. Lumsden and yourself. And the goal is to really build these longitudinal collaborations with these clinical champions and KOLs to deliver this technology to the patient setting. So we take on technology ranging from the early feasibility phase all the way to clinical trials. And that also includes obviously preclinical studies and even GLP studies to move as fast and as effectively into the clinic. So a couple of the technologies that have moved through our space, as you can see on the right, Neurescu, a cardiac assist device, came to us from Europe, out of the Netherlands, through one of the TMCX cohorts. And they came to us because they needed to conduct a usability study. They needed to prove that their device was safe in the hands of users, and the users wouldn't harm themselves while using said device. They were able to work with us, and in a matter of about 3 months executed their study. They got their data, and that allowed them to move into a clinical trial, which they hope to have conducted and finished probably by June to July of this year. And so the turnaround there was just tremendous. The second company underneath that focused on a laser tissue welding technology. And you talked about the competition that exists within the Texas Medical Center. This technology actually came across the street from MD Anderson. They wanted to use our comparative medicine program to conduct a GLP study. And so we helped them secure their GLP data. They are now in a phase 2 clinical trial here in the US. The third company that I'm going to discuss is VenoStent, which has developed a dialysis access wrap. They're a materials company that has a platform technology, and their first indication is for that dialysis access space. And this company came to us through the Vanderbilt University and TMC Innovation as well. And we've been able to collaborate all the way from early feasibility into animal studies, and now looking to get data from their first in-man, where they're hopefully are going to be conducting their pilot clinical trial here with Houston Methodist. And the turnaround time in that has been a couple of years. They've been able to secure a tremendous amount of financing and non-dilutive and venture capital just based on what they've been able to accomplish with us and other stakeholders in our ecosystem. So Stuart's playing a short video here about the Center for Rapid Device Translation that really visualizes the core competencies. As you can see, this is our tremendous building, and we're really focused on the rapid delivery and development of technology and moving it through the right people so that we can get this to the clinic as safely as possible. You're seeing our robotics program. We've got a cyclotron on site to produce radiopharmaceuticals. Our comparative medicine program, as you can read, 65,000 square feet of space dedicated to large and small animal models. We've got a full pathology suite. And really the goal of that program is to move your technology in the correct preclinical model to move and transition towards GLP studies that are then going to be reviewed by a regulatory body. As you can see, Courtney here doing her work in the pathology lab. We've got tremendous imaging in our imaging center. As you know, our relationship with Siemens and the 7 Tesla MR scanner. We've got PET CT, and beyond the 7 Tesla, we've got a 3.0 Tesla scanner. Here's our cyclotron, and it's being maintained by one of our technicians. And yet again, we can create our own radiopharmaceuticals on the basement, ship them up a dumbwaiter to the first floor, inject them right into the patients, and get real-time data and treatment to our patients. Here is our preclinical catheterization lab. The gentleman that runs that lab has over 25 years of experience in inserting things through a catheter in the cardiovascular, perivascular, neurovascular, and endovascular spaces. And of course, Mighty is the crown jewel or hub of innovation, as you've seen before. It's about 35,000 square feet of continuous training and teaching space that's really focused on bringing in people for the training and education component, but really for what I'm focused on is research. It's a tremendous research space. As Dr. Lumsden mentioned, any model that's used in training and education can be relayed into the research component and really drive these preclinical models, these cadaveric early feasibility tests, and even the usability studies, which are required for regulatory bodies using these simulations. And so it's a tremendous facility that opens ideally the door into bringing these companies, once they've been approved, to train and teach in the use of that approved technology. It's just a phenomenal space. Of course, our hospital is recognized by U.S. News and World Reports as the #1 hospital in the state of Texas through the work and dedication of all of our faculty, clinicians, and staff here at Houston Methodist. And training, teaching is a tremendous focus. This is our hybrid OR, which is in our Walter Tower, and we're really leaning on the concept of virtual augmented reality and really extended reality to move towards the transition of what the new treatment methods are going to be. Ideally, we tie all of this right into and open the door for our clinical trials team, which is the Office of Academic Clinical Trials that assists in executing those trials within Houston Methodist. And so here's a short listing of some of the companies. The Center for Rapid Device Translation really is technology agnostic. As long as I can find a key opinion leader or clinical champion that will assess your technology and really be a part of the team and say, I want to take this on and drive it towards the clinic, we'll take it on. And that can assist companies as they develop their model to build their funding, whether it be non-dilutive through SBIR, STTR grants, or other funding mechanisms, and really build value to the companies. And of course, the biggest component, and I will stress this time and time again, we've got great facilities, great equipment, But we can't do any of this without these collaborators. And so the CRDT has great reach across all of Houston Methodist to bring in the right expertise for the specific clinical area of interest that the technology or your company is focused on. A lot of these people have or are leaders in their fields, bring tremendous expertise to very specific niches, and really build value that lies beyond just being a part of the team. We talked about Mighty. I mentioned the concept of proof of concept and early feasibility testing. We've got a model to hopefully expedite this type of testing that's going to build value for both sides, the companies and also our Houston Methodist collaborators, so they can see their longitudinal objectives of going beyond, hey, does this work, to great, it works. Now I want to see it work in a chronic model. I want to see it work in a patient setting, and building towards that clinical situation. And of course, if you need to reach me, you can find me through the website, rapiddevicetranslation.org, and here. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Homer. Homer done a fantastic job there narrating through that video. We're having a couple of audio issues, so there was audio, but that was an amazing overview of the Centre for Rapid Device Translation. And we did do a show on that as well, so if you go to DeBakey's CV Education channel on YouTube and type in Centre for Rapid Device Translation, you will find a dedicated program on that if you want more information. Okay, again, we're about 5 minutes behind, so we're going to jump straight in. The next session is all about hearing the tales of companies that have made it big here in Texas. They've gone through everything. I believe 10 years ago was one of the first companies that came over. So this is some prime information that you're going to get here. If you're a UK company and you want to come over, please listen to these companies. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our first guest is Richard Paxman. He's Managing Director of Paxman. Richard, can you hear us?
Clear, yeah, absolutely.
Super.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, tell us the story. Got a lot to say. How did it all begin? How did you end up over here?
All right, so let me just tell you a little bit of history about the company and what we do, and then we'll head straight into a bit of the story. But it's likely that we've all been touched by cancer at some point in our lives on this call, unfortunately. In fact, millions of patients are diagnosed every single year, and many millions of those patients unfortunately lose their hair after chemotherapy treatment. That really has a huge impact on the patient, their families, their friends, and it not only results in physical but psychological distress for patients, and that can significantly impact a patient's quality of life, emotional well-being, but also outcome as well. Like many exciting businesses that are probably here today, there's often a why behind it. So when I was just 10 years old, my mum was diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. She was young, in her 30s, 4 young children, and she really didn't want to lose her hair. She was offered something called cold caps all those years ago at our local hospital in Huddersfield, if any of you know it. And unfortunately for my mum, it didn't work. And that was the first time she was really impacted by her disease and her prognosis. Seeing that distress, my father was determined to do something about it. So he developed our first prototype of device along with his brother Neil in the late 90s, and we've been working on it ever since. It's truly our vision to make sure that all patients around the world have the opportunity to keep their hair and really get access to this technology. And we lost my mum 20 years ago, so something we're very passionate about. It's simple, it's cooling. It works by cooling the patient's scalp. We induce vasoconstriction, we restrict blood flow and chemotherapy to the hair follicles. But what we also see at those lower temperatures is a drop in metabolic rate, reduced cell division, and also actually less drug diffused through the cell membrane, which we found in the biological work and cell culture models that we have done more recently. The reality is that we're now the world's leading manufacturer of a device used to prevent this difficult side effect. And it works in about 60% of your patients. Again, we've got 2 devices, small compact device, patient wears it in an outpatient setting, usually cooling system, and then a single patient or a reusable cap. Over the last 10 years, we've overcome significant barriers to introduce this technology, including randomized controlled trials, navigated through some of the toughest regulatory bodies, including the FDA, of course, in the USA, and the PMDA in Japan. We have over about 4,000 scalp coolers in about 60 markets globally. We're still a very small company, but a huge potential. And I think a lot of that change has really been down to the change in sort of the supportive cancer care landscape of recent years. We operate a different number of ways in different markets, some direct to market, including the US now, and then using traditional distributor models or licensing models, and incomes generated through capital equipment sales. But more importantly, and what we're doing in the United States, where it's more appropriate based on the privatized healthcare system, is this pay-for-use model or consumable model. And that's really our focus going forward, especially following our recent CPT3 codes that have been published for the future. So just looking at why we want to go to the US, it's of course the world's largest healthcare market. Huge cancer incidence. We're looking at about 1.8 million cancer cases, I think, every single year. Many of those solid tumor cancers, many of those having chemotherapy. So we really can't ignore it, albeit there are often significant barriers to entry, which I think take some time and patience to overcome. I got on a plane in 2010 to try and understand those barriers. It was really important to start to speak to our potential partners, end users, and really understand the landscape. I ended up in Texas, in fact, at the Texas Medical Center. I recall walking through part of it before I realized that I didn't have to walk on the outside. It was very sweaty for most of my meetings, unfortunately, so I recommend dress appropriately. But great place, in fact, an eye-watering place in terms of size. But I would recommend you take the time to understand the market, how to overcome those barriers, which we did. Scalp metastases, which was a safety risk, was often a concern many years ago in the US, but we've overcome that. And I also recommend that you speak to the likes of the Department of International Trade and ABHI, who really will support you. And a bit of a shout out to Autumn, and I know Paul presented earlier, so thanks for all your support. There are 3 routes to market, and I think you need to be clear on not only understanding the market, but understanding the right regulatory pathway for your product. Try and understand what your competitors are doing, understand what other products on the market are similar to yours. There are 3 clear routes that I'm aware of. I'm no regulatory expert, but a 510K, 510K de novo, and a PMA, which tends to be the most difficult. Our competitor was doing a PMA, so that's the route we had to take, which involved a large multi-center clinical trial. We work with Abele College of Medicine, also in the Texas Medical Center. We work with Cleveland Clinic, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and Texas Oncology, and Summit Medical Group. Really getting a mixture of community oncology sites, but also really good academic centers, and always having that real interest from a clinical lead. I think that's really important. It's difficult. I think you have to be very aware of the expense of a potential clinical trial if that's the route that you have to take. As a small business, and especially a small business many years ago, we invested about $2 million in our clinical trial and still have ongoing costs of about $120,000 to $150,000 a year. We ended up with a 510K de novo, which was a much easier route, of course, but we'd still done all the work. We had FDA clearance in 2017 for breast cancer, and that's soon followed by all solid tumors in 2018. Based on the sheer size of the US market, it was really important that we needed to raise finance. We looked at lots of different options, but ended up doing a IPO on the First North NASDAQ market. It's a small cap market in Sweden. And we raised a reasonable amount of money for the company to invest going direct because of the sheer size of the market. We now have our office at the Texas Medical Center, and we have infrastructure using McKesson, a huge giant, they've been a great help to us. Having a specialty pharmacy division, we have a hub services division. I have people strategically placed throughout the United States, all really making sure that we can service the whole of the USA. Many advise just focus on one area of the USA, but I've decided to do the most of it, wrongly or rightly. We've got a really great process set up, which I don't have time for today to talk to you, but please reach out and ask any questions in due course. It's a device, so we have to think also about serviceability. So finding a right technical services partner in the market is critical. To facilitate that growth in the USA, it was also important to prepare our UK business. Now, I think someone talked about the US being so much bigger, and it really is, and Texas is equally that. and it was important that we made investments to our UK team. In fact, from 2017 to 2021, we've gone from 25 employees to 60 employees in that space of time. So really growing and focusing on all aspects of the business. We now have 600 scalp cools. In fact, I think 700 scalp cools in about 370 locations across the United States in some of the biggest cancer centers in the world. One of our biggest wins was working with US Oncology early on. That gave us a potential network across the whole of the United States very quickly, but basically community-based oncology. Here are some names. We're in 11 of the top 20 cancer centers. It's about building relationships though, and that's incredibly important to me. We have no business development team, but I've spent a week, a month, or when I could before COVID, spending time in those particular markets. We of course work with Methodist, great group to work with, very important to our business. One of my biggest naiveties was early on in this whole scenario, and it was not understanding the regulatory pathway. Please spend time early on to understand the regulatory, unfortunately, sorry, but I mean the reimbursement pathway. How do you get paid? It's one of the key focuses that we now have, and it's really about getting national coverage and payment for scalp cooling in the United States. And clinical guidelines are critical for payers to make coverage decisions. Again, really important to make sure that you look to see if your product or your service is already on these guidelines. And then also see where you fit. How do you get paid? Is it a CPT code? Is it a HCPCS code? Or is it something else? And that's really critical to start early on in the whole situation. And last but not least, really start to think about where you should be placed, hopefully Texas, but also then where should you have strategic people? And this is really a map of where we're really now focusing on for the future. So final comment, get on a plane and build relationships, do your market research, understand that regulatory bit, do your due diligence, how do you get paid, learn from your peers, that's what I've done throughout, ensure you've got the resources needed, and that's time, money and energy. Use your expertise at your fingertips, DIT, ABHI, Chamber of Commerce. Be patient and be passionate. But thank you very much for your time today.
Richard, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. I actually didn't realize that you guys had an IPO there. So we're just looking at your share price there. It's looking good. For the record, I do not own any shares in Paxman, just to make that very clear. But Richard, thank you very much. And also, I know you're on holiday at the moment, so thanks for participating on your holiday. We're going to hear more from the companies in about 20-25 minutes. We're going to have more of an open discussion. So if you can please hang around for that, Richard, that would be great. I'm going to hand it over to Autumn to introduce the next company.
Great, thanks, Stuart. So our next company, we've got James Carpenter with SurePulse, which was one of the first BioBridge companies that came over to the States. They have a wireless monitor for newborns. So I will let James expand on that a little bit more and tell us about your journey over here.
Richard, that would be great. I'm going to hand it over. Looks like maybe having a wee tech issue there. Thank you, man.
A wireless monitor.
James, can you hear us, sir?
My screen, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
There you are.
There we go.
Me?
Superb.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Probably not. Okay, let's just go. Let's run with it.
Can you hear me or see me?
We can hear and see you, James. I don't think you can hear us, unfortunately. So maybe someone in the studio can just chat to him on Zoom saying go.
James, can you hear us, sir?
He can't hear
I can hear you.
Can you all hear me okay?
I can't hear you on here.
He can't hear us, guys.
He must not have his volume over.
Just say carry on, please. Thank you.
We can move to the next company. Do we have a test run?
I think we're good. We always have at least one glitch, guys. We've got to roll with it. It's all good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Great. All right. Yes, I can. There we go.
James, take it away, please.
Yes. Well, good morning. It's really it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm James Carpenter, the CEO of SurePulse Medical. Our aim at SurePulse is to give every baby the best start to life. And we're a little bit smaller and earlier than Paxman were. Thank you so much for that great presentation. We're 9 employees, 6 directors. We've been going since 2014, and we're a spin out of the University of Nottingham. So I'll give you a bit of background to the company and product first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about our journey through the Texas Medical Center Accelerator. So on the left of the slide is a case that's recently come to media attention in the US. It involves a case of a baby called Harry Richford, who was born on his due date. The delivery was classed as low risk. However, sadly, Harry died 7 days after his delivery, following a botched delivery and resuscitation. And 1 in 10 babies need some form of resuscitation at birth due to prematurity, delivery mismanagement, or congenital defects. And in Harry's case, it illustrates what can happen when things go wrong. And on the left here is an extract of the International Neonatal Resuscitation Guidelines, demonstrating how regular assessment of vital signs is so critical for determining course of action. Any deviation from guidelines can have severe consequences for the babies and their families. However, existing vital sign monitoring technologies do not work well for the specific requirements of resuscitation. There's pulse oximeters, which are slow to pick up a signal. ECG electrodes are fiddly. And so healthcare providers fall back on the stethoscope. And it's now been shown that there's 1 in 3 assessments get the heart rate wrong. And so at SurePulse, our vision is to revolutionize neonatal vital sign monitoring and give clinicians and healthcare providers the tools to provide optimal newborn care. Now, our first product is a wireless heart rate monitor specifically designed for use straight after birth. The patented design consists of an optical sensor integrated into a soft cap, communicating wirelessly with a display. Now, in normal care, a cap's already put on a baby at birth, so our solution fits in naturally with this. And the display provides a heart rate number and signal trace visible to the whole delivery team. The cap's consumable and the display is reusable. And the technology has now been validated on close to 500 babies in clinical use, and it has received CE approval, and we're in the final stages of the US FDA 510K process. Now, what we're aiming to do is an improvement in clinical outcomes, including neurodevelopmental improvement, reduced injury, and potentially save lives. Now, this value impacts multiple stakeholders. For family, better initial management of the baby impacts hospital stay. And giving healthcare professionals the right information at the right time results in more confident care. And for hospitals and healthcare systems, particularly in insurance-based markets, clinical risk is better managed. There's also a reputational opportunity for hospitals to be at the forefront of adopting new technology. So that's a bit about the reason for SurePulse's existence and our product development. And now I want to talk about our experience in Texas. So I was introduced to Autumn Wasker at the UK DIT in London in April 2018 and was encouraged to apply to the TMC Accelerator, TMCX. Now, of course, the US was always part of our international strategy, but we still had to make a relatively quick decision to commit to at least 6 in-person weeks across 3 months that year. And I'm so glad that we took that jump. And we landed in Houston early August that year. And the program itself culminated in November with Demo Day. But really, that was the sort of launch of our US campaign. It wasn't the end. And the program was so multifaceted, but I really want to talk briefly about some of the tangible outputs that have helped us and maybe some tips that might help you as well. So firstly, validation. And immediately in the first week of the program, the focus was on the business plan, the value proposition, and the assumptions behind them. We were encouraged to think big, but to think focused, breaking down our indications and sectors and thinking through the value of each and being ruthless in ordering and prioritizing. And this tends to be what appeals to an inquirer. Can you solve and dominate one indication? And we were then introduced to clinicians and stakeholders within the TMC ecosystem to validate our ideas and assumptions. Now, this process is one which still resonates to this day. Whenever we think of new directions or ideas, we always recall the methods that we applied in Texas and we reapply them. And I believe this laser focus and clinical validation, testing every assumption, is absolutely essential for success. Secondly, regulatory. We had the great opportunity to meet representatives from the FDA, had a slightly intimidating 1-on-10 meeting with their staff, but this plus the variety of programming, strategic advice, helped us to refine our strategy. Now, actually, one of the most valuable outputs was simply an introduction to a consultant who's been fantastic at guiding us through the processes, helping us to think in the FDA's shoes. And I would definitely recommend a good regulatory consultant. I mean, no one knows your product and your company like you do, but it's the consultant that knows the FDA, and a good consultant will guide you through, ensure you don't make any silly errors, and ensure there's good alignment between their requirements and your product and supporting data. Thirdly, publicity. I mean, a big key learn for us was how to do publicity. I think in the UK, we can often be a bit coy and understated, and there's a noticeable cultural difference here in Texas. It's about thinking big and thinking bold, not about overselling yourself, but having confidence to get your name out there to talk about the importance of what you're doing. And TMCX gave us that unique exposure across multiple channels, but also that confidence and way of thinking about ourselves and our company. Another output was the TMCX program provided accelerated access to a wide variety of healthcare industry and healthcare market stakeholders. And it really is about who you meet. The 6 weeks in person programming gave us a wide contact base from investors to clinicians, to regulators, to reimbursement specialists, legal and intellectual property firms, strategists, and fellow medtech entrepreneurs. And it's not that you couldn't meet those people by other ways, by resolve or by chance, but part of the reason of attending a focused accelerator is to condense that process. Now, we've been engaging with clinical and other stakeholders right from the start of the development cycle with usability and market research. And with CE approval, we're undertaking beta testing to confirm product market fit, not just clinically, but with procurement and reimbursement, and to get endorsement of the business model. Now, with any market, there are different attitudes, but we focused on finding and working with the innovators and early adopters in this phase, people that are willing to bear with bugs and warts and to feedback their experience with us so that we can improve their product and service. Now, the sort of clinicians who want to interact with early stage companies, accelerators, tend to be those sorts of people. So I'd really encourage you to find them and to work with them. Now, to that end, we're always on the lookout for more beta testers. So if there are interested healthcare providers here, we'd be delighted to hear from you. I think I'm almost running out of time. So all I wanted to say really was just a final thank you to all of our partners, supporters and funders. There's several here who've helped us both get to Texas and to make headway here. Like I say, the US was always on our part of our strategic plan, but this accelerator and opportunity and TMC just provided so much support and acceleration that we wouldn't have got elsewhere. So just a big thank you to everyone for that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James. I'll hand over to Autumn.
Thanks, James. It's good seeing you, and we look forward for you coming back to visit us in Texas. Next up, we've got Andrew and Lyd from Test Cards, who have hit the ground running, have outgrown their space at TMC, and are really doing some remarkable things. So let me go ahead and pass that over to you, especially so they can highlight their work they're doing here, partnered with Houston Methodist.
We were just patching them in. And as Autumn said there, yes, this is actually a project underway with Houston Methodist right now. So you're hearing stuff that's just fresh off the press. Okay, gents, here we are. Welcome.
Oh, sorry, it's the saying of the age, isn't it? I didn't unmute at the time. Sorry about that.
No worries. So we'd love to hear more about you guys.
Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of a brief presentation about the company, if that's okay first, and then we'll talk about some of the lessons that we learned. So I'm just going to share my screen and do a little death by PowerPoint. So we're a company, UK-based company. We have offices in Scarborough, in Yorkshire. We have offices in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and we have an office in Houston, Texas now. So how did we get there? So we're very fortunate. Most of the people listening to this presentation will never have been isolated from healthcare, certainly not geographically or economically, but this is a real problem for many people in the world. Problems that were in early talks with the Gates Foundation, big hit there from Houston, to address. But people are still socially isolated from healthcare. Even before COVID come along, being isolated from healthcare because of being elderly and frail, or mental health conditions, or people who are caring for others within their own home is a really big deal. Tescar was born out of a conversation between Luke and I about how bad men were at engaging in healthcare. Now, this is self-imposed isolation on the basis that, you know, you don't want to admit something's wrong. You don't want to give up that time to go, make an appointment, or go to your GP, or sit in front of someone and give up that power of saying, you know, I think something wrong, or have to sell to them that there's something wrong with you. And we thought this is ridiculous, that we should be in a world in which this happens. So we sort of envisaged a future where predictive preventative medicine was the way to go. So the first products we developed were a test for urinary tract infection, drugs of abuse testings, pregnancy test, testing for diabetes, and more recently we've developed our own COVID testing. And the reason we started this, because this is the technology we needed to develop. So we've developed a at-home diagnostic kit that could be delivered in the form of a postcard through someone's door, and in conjunction with a mobile phone application can deliver an immediate result, diagnosing conditions in the comfort, convenience, and privacy of your own home. So the technology we developed is predominantly colorimetric and densitometric technology, and it's been tested in trials along with Roche Diagnostics and come out to be more reliable than the in-hospital use scanners. And that's technology that can be applied to any diagnostic or rapid diagnostic. So we have a very large pipeline as well, because we can apply it to any particular situation. So our pipeline can include anything that's shows a clinical utility within the home, but also has a good commercial opportunity. So monitoring the long-term health conditions such as diabetes and kidney disease, conditions such as sexually transmitted infections where people don't want to put their hands up and admit there's something wrong straight away, world health products such as HIV and malaria screening, and screening for cancers. We're a few years off that, but it's definitely a direction we're going to be heading in. The home user gains an immediate answer to their question rather than a load of nonsensical numerical results. Home users don't use testing the same way as clinical users do. So we give them clear, unambiguous description of what's going on. They get guidance, they get support through the application, but we get a lot of real estate with the mobile phone, so we can better contextualize the answers and deliver them back something that's going to mean something to them. Clinical users have a means of managing patients at a distance, so they're not having to bring them into their clinics all the time and increase footfall. They're able to genuinely have a better experience for both the patient and the healthcare provider. The way we see it is what digital health provides us with is a gold standard destination and a way of making multiple routes into that gold standard destination rather than a one-size-fits-all approach that we have in most healthcare economies. Our pregnancy test also, by comparison, if we look at the sort of technology, all the technology is in a mobile phone. You know, this is tens of millions of pounds worth has gone into developing this, and we leverage all of this technology. So we're fairly technology light in what we're developing. Our pregnancy test has no disposable technology. If you compare this to most quantitative pregnancy tests, they have to throw away a Casio watch every time we do a pregnancy test. There's so much plastic involved. Ours is the lowest impact environmentally pregnancy test of any quantitative pregnancy test on the market. For our COVID testing and for our, this is a good example of what we're doing in terms of dealing with infections and in terms of public health. So the individual, again, gets that clear, unambiguous guidance, but the data that's generated, because the data is being geotagged, can be used by health authorities to make clear, educated decisions about the right thing to do next. So when new guidance and of what people need to be doing, or where support and education needs to be given around particular diseases, you can track where particular diseases are coming in, going out, where you have negatives, positives, where those tests are being used to be able to gauge in what sort of education and support that needs to be done in those particular areas. So the data is incredibly valuable. So what do we learn in TMCX? So this is Lance Black's cabinet. We actually entered Texas in the Texas Medical Center Accelerator program. and Lance Black owns a cabinet of all the different things that came into that program. And it's important to understand where you are and why you're there. They are not unfamiliar with innovation. You will not impress people when you walk in the door. You'll be used to sort of being the standout innovator in your area. Well, everyone there's an innovator. They are used. You need to bring your A game. You need to be coming there with the best that you've got. Now, the way you do that is only go when the time is right. Don't think, well, US, biggest consumer market in the world. There's a lot of money there. Let's go there. Wait until you're ready. If you're not ready, then you will make no progress very quickly. You will not be engaging with the right people. You will not have the right story for them to be able to pick it up. And critically, for medical technology, IP is important. Have your IP sorted out and have your brand understood before you're going to the US. Try to blend in. You can see Luke and I did that by wearing some scrubs, because you get discounts at some of the bars in Houston if you're wearing scrubs. So there's a tip there for you as well. But the health needs in the US aren't the same as the health needs in the UK. They're very different stories. There's very different requirements. Having the NHS here the NHS is an amazing thing to have, free at point of use health. But really, you only have to make the case that you're doing something better or you're doing something cheaper, and you've got really good engagement from the NHS. To go to the US and say we can save money, what a lot of people hear when you can say we're saving money in the US is, who are you taking that money off of? Understand who is paying, who you're taking money out the pockets of, because they're the people actually you need on your side, because otherwise they end up being barriers and blockers for you moving forward. And use the local knowledge that's there. I've had a couple of people say they use local consultants. These are the people who understand the market you're going into, whether it be from a financial perspective or from a regulatory perspective. So you need to leverage as much of that knowledge as possible while you're there. Take the help. So there's Autumn. I don't see her wearing her test card T-shirt for some reason in this conference. I don't really know why. I'm sure she'll put it on later. But use the people that are there. So with the Accelerator program and with the consulate, you have additional members of staff. Consider them part of your team. Give them tasks. Give them work to do. If they don't know what you need, if you don't tell them what it is that you need from them or where you need to be, they can't help you. So make as much use of them as well. But not just the people who are attached to the consulate and the program, the other people in the program as well. So we had, I think, another 10 companies on our program, on our Accelerator program, share leads. Talk to them about what you've been doing. Talk to them about what they've been doing. Share social media posts. Hook up and connect, because you become more of the sum of your parts. Your voice gets louder when you join it together with your peers on those programs. And cast your net wide. The TMC is obviously a massive network of hospitals. But remember that hospitals isn't all they are. And your product might not be best placed in hospitals. For us, it was actually a little bit difficult initially to break through the barrier of being presented with loads and loads of opportunities within different hospitals, where our product is actually an at-home product. So work much better with primary care, with community initiatives, with the public health bodies. And once we understood that actually that's where we needed to be, things actually started to go a lot better. But speak to everyone and make sure when you're doing clinical studies, so someone spoke about clinical studies, when you're doing clinical studies, make sure you get the right site, because everyone there will be able to do a clinical study, but you need to be able to recruit the right people at the right time in the right way to be able to deliver the results that you need for your FDA filing. But get a sponsor is probably the best piece of advice I can give you in any of these things. If you have a clinical sponsor in any of those bodies that can effectively bang your drum for you inside those institutions and organizations, that you shorten your time from start to getting where you want to be. They can move the needle for you so much faster than you can move it for yourself. And finally, make the most of it. So these accelerator programs are generally quite short. 3 months seems to sound like a really long time when you first go, but you need to commit to it entirely, because it's such a limited opportunity. You have to immerse yourself in it and give up the time. If you don't have the time to go now, it isn't the right time to be doing it. So that would be my overall advice, really, is just fully commit to what you're doing when you go and make sure you give it everything you've got. So thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew, thank you very much for that. That was a really good insight and account of your experience here in the TMC. I'm glad that test car has made it into Lance's cabinet. We're also putting a cabinet together ourselves over here at Mighty, so I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be in there as well. So next up on the list we have Alex Young, who is the CEO of Verti. I'd just like to mention that Verti are also one of our event sponsors as well. So Alex, if you're on the line, we would love to hear more about your experience in the Texas Med Center and here at Houston Methodist. Looks like Alex is coming in now. Alex, can you hear me, sir?
I can. Hey, Stuart, how are you guys doing? Thanks so much for having us, and thanks to Dr. Lumsden and everyone else for such a great presentation and conference so far. For us, I'm going to try and keep this relatively fast so we can get back on track with everything that everyone's talking about. My name is Alex Young. I'm a trauma and orthopedic surgeon by training. I trained in the NHS. And also spent a little bit of time in the hospital of special surgery in Manhattan doing trauma and orthopedics. And then I left the NHS around about 3 years ago now to found Verti, really with a mission to make education affordable and accessible for everyone on the planet, and to revolutionize how people in any workforce learn, train, and perform. So what I'm going to talk about today is really the journey of Verti in the US and in particular the Texas market, give some hopefully helpful learning points for any of the companies watching this, and also help any clinicians watching this understand a little bit about what we do and how we might be able to help. So for those of you who are not in healthcare, really in any sector, this is how people often consume their educational content, or how the workforce learns at scale. There's a little bit of a trade-off between education at scale, whether that is through webinars, whether it's through e-learning platforms, on the left-hand side of this graph, which are low cost, but are perhaps not that engaging. And then those down at the bottom right, such as face-to-face in-person training, or like you saw Dr. Lumsden talking about earlier, where you've got the actual apprenticeship model of surgical training, where you're stood opposite the surgeon who is teaching the resident, and getting direct feedback. However, that level of education and training is often not particularly scalable in itself, is highly costly, and often there's not a huge amount of data that's collected on that. So one of our passions at Verti is really to scale how people learn and train. So using some clever technology, including artificial intelligence and virtual and augmented reality, we created a cloud-based platform that really allows anyone, anywhere in the world to improve how they learn, train and perform within their organization, and particularly in healthcare, to keep patients safe. As you've seen from some of the presentations this morning, centers like Mighty and the DeBakey Vascular Surgery Institute are absolutely essential for any large healthcare provider to have, to ensure that their patients are safe, their staff are well trained, and that the subsequent costs around training are reduced, and that these type of organizations are really the center for medical education within North America. Outside of healthcare, there's lots of interesting stats around how long people remember training. So if any of you watching this think back to the last time you did a physical in-person training session, if you didn't follow that up with repetitive practice or put into action very, very quickly, it's likely your skills faded. And from a number of surveys across a number of different sectors, not just in healthcare, lots and lots of people are quite unsatisfied with how they consume learning in a work-related environment. So before I sort of jump in and explain exactly what we do at Verti and how we sort of have conquered that, as I mentioned, we're a relatively young company in terms of when we were founded, but we scaled up very, very quickly. So for anyone who is watching this, who's got an international or even US-based healthcare or education-based company, this is kind of our trajectory through Texas. So We originally sort of founded Verti and launched in the UK back in 2018 when we had our initial cloud-based education platform. One of the things that I was very passionate about, I've had a couple of companies in the past, was making sure that we got into the US market really from day one, actually, which put us in a slightly different sort of position to some of our counterparts who might sort of stay in their own geography for a long period of time. And one of the ways that we tested the waters really in Houston in particular was by teaming up with the ABHI. And everyone's heard Paul Benton speak this morning. ABHI is a fantastic organization. We actually went on the sort of progenitor of what is now the ABHI's US Accelerator program, which we're still a member of to this day. We went on a road trip out around the whole of Texas, in particular went around Houston towards the end of 2018. And actually at that same time, I previously met Autumn Wasker from the Department of International Trade in the UK, who was telling me all about the UK Bio Bridge with the Texas Medical Center. And so during that mission, I actually went and disappeared from the mission for a little bit to have an interview with the team at the Texas Medical Center, and Emily and Lance Black, who you've heard speak and heard name drop today. They were absolutely fantastic, went through an interview there, and actually at the end of that trade mission, we got accepted onto the Texas Medical Center's innovation program. So really, without a huge amount of planning, I think retrospectively, I'm allowed to say we absolutely mapped it out. But at the time, it was relatively sort of, serendipitous that all these things came together. I then, as the founder of a team of around about 5 people at that stage, decided to kind of up sticks, move directly over to Houston, so that I could take as many meetings as possible with organizations like Mighty, like UTMB, like MD Anderson, who then subsequently became customers of ours over the coming months. At that stage back in the UK, again, we did everything that people tell you not to do as a startup. So we also attacked the NHS, and we were the only education company ever to be selected onto the NHS's National Innovation Program and Accelerator. And I'll talk in a little second about why that was the case. And then back in the United States, we really started building up our sales force around Houston, around the Texas Medical Center, on the back of some of the feedback we were getting from customers. And certainly in the education space and in the patient education market as well, there were lots and lots of similarities between the UK and the US and everywhere else actually on the planet, which for us was just, again, very, very reaffirming. So at this stage, our messaging was all around how do you scale in-person training? How do you reduce the costs of face-to-face training? How do you make things easier and more convenient? And we then subsequently attacked California and New York, and then COVID hit in 2020. And so as you can probably imagine, with the type of product that we have, we went through a period of sort of extreme hyper growth, going from sort of a team of around about 7 or 8 people to a team of upwards of kind of 30 people split between the UK and the US. With, again, a lot of help and assistance and support from people like the Department for International Trade, from the Texas Medical Center, built out our offices in the TMCX building, and we're able to connect and liaise with our customers, and now work with a number of people around the Texas area, as well as in California, New York, and internationally as well. So I think with that being said, that was kind of our trajectory. One thing I really would kind of emphasize to anyone is value to customers. And if you take one thing away from this talk, it really is the value and the connection with your customers that matters the most. So from day one, we really were, research and learning nerds. So we did some randomized control trials, which were a learning platform is possibly unnecessary, but we published a randomized control trial. We proved the benefits of the platform in lots of studies. We also actually patented some of the deep analytics around how we can predict how people perform once they've been through the system. And then we were fortunate enough to pick up a number of commercial awards as well, including being named one of Time Magazine's Best Inventions of 2020 and one of Fast Company's 2021 Most Innovative Companies this year. In terms of what the platform does, you've already seen Stuart give a fantastic demo, probably better than me. We might be recruiting him, Dr. Lumsden, because that was actually so good. What we have built really is this cloud-based learning system, which has two components. One which is interactive video, that's 2D video or 360 video, as you saw Stuart demonstrating earlier. And then we also built out this AI-powered computer-generated virtual patient, really for training soft skills. So across any type of workforce, if you break down how people learn, train, and perform into technical skills, which we optimize for video on that, and then soft skills, where we optimize for using natural language processing, AI, and analyze people's both team-based and individual performance, we can start predicting how people are going to perform when it matters. And our kind of platform really adopts a no-code content suite, so people can create their own experiences, again, as you saw in the demo earlier, that can then be distributed within the organization or outside. And then most importantly, the AI analyzes how people consume that information and how they perform under pressure. This is just one quick overview from one of our customers in Los Angeles, just to give you a sort of brief idea of the value to our customers.
And now virtual reality is helping medical professionals train right from their home.
School was postponed in March. I thought, what's going to happen? I don't know exactly how to run a code in COVID situation, but with this VR viewer and with the simulated patients, I feel a lot more confident.
And so that's just a very kind of quick overview of some of the bits we did during COVID. I was actually in Los Angeles when California went into lockdown, and we pivoted from working with a large hospital in California around their surgical training to actually delivering COVID training. And on the back of that, we had lots of amazing sort of press. We were featured on the NASDAQ Tower in Times Square, although no one was there to actually see it in person. We got featured in the Great Britain campaign through the DIT, and also picked up in some international press as well, which was very humbling to be able to help and support the frontline healthcare workforce's education and upskilling around COVID. In terms of what we do for clinicians, our platform, again, it works across both mobile devices, web-based desktop browsers, and also VR and AR headsets. We optimize to go in before, during, and after existing in-person training to both augment it and reduce skill fade afterwards, and pull out lots and lots of data around that. And in terms of the actual content we can put on the platform, we're quite different to other providers in that we can take libraries of existing video content and we optimize for human performance. So we can work across things like resilience and well-being training for healthcare professionals. We can work with device manufacturers and small companies around their sales, training, and almost become part of their marketing function. And we can also work with healthcare providers to look at patient outcomes and patient education to reduce net out migration and increase net retention for hospital systems as well. So hugely variable based on the content. I think overall, I'm just going to sort of wrap up there by saying, for anyone who's listening to this on the live stream, do engage with all of the speakers and the providers, in particular the DIT, ABHI, the whole team at Methodist who put on this fantastic conference, as well as the Texas Medical Center and anyone else kind of in the Houston region. It's very unique on the planet in being such a focused center of excellence with lots of healthcare providers. And if you would like to connect with us at Verti, we've got a booth which is being manned by Mike, who's one of our customer success representatives, who is from Texas himself, one of our Texas team. And I'm available on alex@verti.com if anyone would like to get in touch with me. Thank you.
Alex, thank you very much for that. That was fantastic. So let's just jump straight into the discussion here. I know we're slightly over time, so we're going to try and keep this short. If we could bring back our speakers into a panel discussion. So we'll bring back Richard, James, Luke, Andrew. I think we just... So Alex, I'm just going to... I'll ask you a question while we bring everyone else in. I kind of want to know what do we have right? Like, what are we doing right that's just brilliant, okay? As in the TMC as a whole. And what are we doing wrong? Like, how can we improve as well in bringing you guys into our systems? Maybe start with that.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think there's so much really that's done right. I think the whole attitude of certainly everyone that we connected with in the Texas Medical Center as a whole is really one of, why wouldn't we try to adopt this type of innovation to help our patients? And I think the whole mindset for everyone should be, and certainly is in the TMC, how can we help our patients, and how can we ourselves better ourselves. I think that the setup when we were there, certainly in person, was just fantastic, and the support was excellent from everyone. In terms of improvement, I think it's difficult to say. I mean, I think I would actually flip that around and say a lot of it is on the companies who come over to make the most out of the opportunities, because there is so much opportunity that you really have got to put all of your effort and focus into it, and meet with as many people as possible. And I think one thing that all of the hospital systems can probably do better is opening themselves up more for meetings and integrating some of the sort of the companies, even at the early stage, into some of the discussions with the clinicians, just from a feedback purpose, so that they can quickly find out whether what they've got is going to be useful and is going to have product market fit in a hospital system, and there are legs on it. But equally, if there isn't, giving them direct feedback early and quite open and honest feedback, I think is really important, because if people aren't given direct feedback, that they might sort of pursue an idea where there's no commercial value, there's no value to patients, and it's just kind of founder assumptions that are running wild.
That's great. That's very insightful, Alex. And I'm going to ask if Dr. Lumsden wants to ask him a question as well.
Yeah, Alex, the direct feedback thing is interesting, because you tend not to want, as a clinician, to give you bad news, and I often think there's an opportunity lost in that. And the problem is, you got to have a relationship with somebody before you say, well, what do you think about this? And they give you blunt, direct feedback, regardless of what the product happens to be. And so I'm not sure if it's the first time you meet somebody, they're going to give you that kind of feedback. And it probably has to be built on establishing that relationship, because you're right. I mean, the good news is probably more important to you than the compliments that you're getting. It's so easy to give you compliments and then walk away from it. And so maybe the other folks have examples of where they've had direct feedback from a clinician they're interacting with, which is not really what they wanted to hear, but ultimately proved to be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think one of our first pieces of feedback was from a clinician at the women's hospital there, and she just was very direct and said, I just don't see it. I don't see a need. I don't think the problem that you've highlighted is a problem. And it's not one that we experience. And she was one of many clinicians that we interacted with. But I think that interaction is stuck in my mind. Someone that was willing to be very honest, and I don't think that was necessarily shared with other clinicians, but that was important to us, and I'm glad that she felt bold enough to talk to us about it.
And Autumn, is there anything you'd like to add? That's the things.
I think the only thing I would ask of both of y'all is, what would you give advice for, if there is one piece of advice you could give to either academia or a company that's looking at coming over here to Texas? What would that recommendation be?
I think for me it would be, plan what you want to achieve. I think it's very easy to come and be overwhelmed by the breadth of just opportunity. So be specific and focused.
Yeah, I think similar to sort of what I said a second ago, really, I think you've got to go all in on it. I think you can't plan to, fly in and out every couple of months and expect, good results to follow. I think you have got to really immerse yourself. And following on from what Dr. Lumsden said, I think building up those relationships so that you can get true and honest feedback from everyone. And I think the relationship building piece is the most important. And a lot of the people that I met when I was first out in the Texas Medical Center, we're continuously staying in touch, and it's always great to catch up with them, and I know them personally and get on well with all of them. So I think don't forget that when you're building your business and you're trying to move really quickly. Do build and cultivate those relationships but by immersing yourself in the Texas Medical Center and in any environment, really.
Okay, well, on that note, I would just like to thank you very much. You're talking about flying. Can we fly out? Every month or so. I found myself, like, from a logistic point of view, flying directly from Houston to Manchester is really good. It's a direct flight. It's probably the cheapest flights out there with Singapore Airlines, etc. And you're straight on the train. You go up north to Edinburgh, you go down south, etc. to Wales or London. And you're talking there about, Alex, you said that the companies, you turn it back to companies, what can they do to really make things better? For us, we've actually found that a 60-second elevator pitch video is phenomenal. Okay, and that's actually how we're going to start moving things forward from now on. Like, if you're a company or an academic, whatever, especially a startup company, if you got something, email me a 60-second video, email me a pitch. We can get that circulated very quickly, and it really will help engage the physicians, surgeons, clinicians, etc. Dr. Lumsden, would you like to add to that? Close out?
Yeah, it's interesting that you've kind of taken that spin on it. You see, we're coming out of a studio. We built a YouTube education channel, primarily around medical education, which has just exploded, and it's amazing how much traffic you get with it. I mean, we now have over 50,000 subscribers, and we're getting over 600,000 views a month. And so these platforms are an incredibly important way of trying to get your message out. The message we're trying to get out is we want to be in the top 3 or 4 companies, hospitals in the United States, and we have multiple strategies to do that, but certainly one of them is by things like we are doing at the moment. It's very difficult for us to get our brand out there because of the complexity of Texas Medical Center. There's 70 Methodist hospitals in the United States. I mean, I've had patients arrive in Dallas Methodist expecting to see me and say, well, we're in the wrong city. And so it's all about, whether you're a small company or a place like ours, getting your message out and being able to condense this down into some sort of video format we've found to be incredibly valuable.
And I think, just to add on a couple of extra minutes, we are going to just pull back on Richard and Andrew there, because I think this is really important. This is probably one of the most important parts of this program, to get advice to these companies. So Richard, we asked the question, like, what are we doing right? Kind of what are we doing wrong? In your opinion, what do you think we can do better, and what can companies do to enhance their experience here?
Good question. So I think for me, and again, I've not been through all the programs as same as like Alex and James and perhaps Andrew. We had a slightly different entry to the US market, of course, but what I would find most helpful, and again, you may already offer it, but a real focus on that how to get paid piece. That for us, with a device that doesn't have a predicate or codes in place already, has been our biggest struggle. So anything to help really navigate, and I don't just mean explain about HCPCS codes, explain about CPT codes. I mean a real roadmap and some real consultancy to provide support in doing that, because ultimately that's where, for me, the growth of your potential business is.
And I'll pass that question on to Andrew as well.
I think for me, there's so much great about the program. So when I say about things I think you can do better, I don't want to detract from that. But the thing that I think would make a real difference is being able to engage with stakeholders before the program starts. Because 3 months sounds like a really long time, but actually it just goes by in a blink of an eye. Especially when you've got set sessions to take part. So to be able to sit down with people, so perhaps using that elevator pitch style approach where you can actually pick people up and who already have an interest in the company before they even get there, sit down with them, set some objectives, understand what it is that they want from working with you in the program. You understand what it is you want from them working with the program, and make sure those are aligned. And you achieve so much more in such a short period of time. We found that we were 2 months in before we started to really make any real, although we'd learned an awful lot, we were 2 months in before we started to make any real inroads into where we wanted to be, and what we wanted to do. So to just have that sort of initial intro to, like at the very beginning, with people who were already bought into working with you, I think would make a real difference.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we're at the the hour of our show. Dr. Lumsden, Autumn, would you like to say a few closing words?
No, I think this has been phenomenal, to be honest with you. It's I've learned a lot, and we're here to help. I mean, we would really like to see increasing number of relationships formed between smart people like you are and smart people in Texas, and we're here to help you in any way that we can. I mean, I exist predominantly in the cardiovascular world, but we have a lot of contacts in cancer and all the various different aspects of medicine. So let us know how we can help you, please. Autumn?
And I think for me, it's been a pleasure working with you all and being part of this today, so thank you all. I think one thing that I really want to highlight too is we've got 4 examples of companies that have been really successful, but we have another 7 that are starting their journey that really showcase new technology into this market. So it would be great to get feedback from anybody, any local clinicians that might be able to provide some insight. You can feed that back to the companies, you can feed it back to me, and I can be the blunt Texas voice that gives the bad news if you don't want to give it directly to them. But thank you all so much again, and thank you both Dr. Lumsden and Stuart. It's been a pleasure being part of this today.
Thank you, Autumn. And that's a great segue there. We talked about the 7 UK companies that are trying to make an entrance here. We actually are going to close this out with a video of the 60-second pitches of those companies. And keep in mind, this is still happening. This is still going on in Hopin. We have another 90 minutes left. There's 2 discussions going on. One's about the UK support mechanisms, which you heard about earlier. The other is about the TMC and Houston Methodist support mechanisms. And of course, we have our vendor booths. You will be able to go into these booths and understand more about any company or speaker that have been on this show today, especially the startup companies, of which there are 7. So on that note, I'd like to close out and just say one thing that we don't have in Houston that we need, and that is a decent fish and chip shop. We do not have fish and chips here in Houston. This is terrible. It's probably the food capital of the world here. So on that note, I'd like to just finish on the video, and thank you everybody for your attendance, your participation, and goodbye.
Hello, my name is Henry Pinchbeck. I'm the CEO of 3D Live Prints, a medical 3D printing company. We design and manufacture patient-specific medical devices. These devices include anatomical models, surgical cutting guides, and patient-specific titanium implants, all created using 3D printers. Our USP is we supply these services at the point of care in a hospital, which means that a hospital gets a full service of an embedded biomedical engineer, a suite of hardware, and a full capability of software, which enables us to provide all of these services within the hospital. We're looking to partner with a hospital in order to run clinical trials on 50 super complex operations. These operations could be in orthopedics, pediatrics, oncology, spinal, cardiology, or general surgery. Please get in touch and let us work on your 50 most complex operations through the next year, where we can supply these patient-specific devices. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick Hughes, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Arthronica. Our goal is to utilize our machine learning and artificial intelligence to accurately measure patients' disease activity and provide better patient outcomes. Rheumatoid arthritis affects 400,000 people in the UK and 1.9 million Americans. The cost to the UK are over £10 billion, and the cost to the US are over $19 billion a year. Arthronica's ML algorithms capture and measure joint swelling remotely, delivering our own virtual disease activity score, or VDAS. This is then seen by clinical teams without the need to be present in clinic. As we move forward, we anticipate the value proposition for rheumatology aligns perfectly with clinical departments' needs in 3 key areas. Thank you so much for listening.
Half of all cancers are diagnosed in the late stages of the disease. Because of this, less than 20% of patients will survive to 5 years. Yet if detected early, over 80% of patients will survive 10 years or more from cancer. Early cancer detection is the single biggest predictor of survival and is also 50% cheaper to treat than late-stage disease. See the Signs is a company founded by NHS doctors that uses artificial intelligence mapped with the latest evidence to identify patients at risk of cancer at the earliest and most survivable stage of the disease. Fully integrated with the electronic health record and available as app, See the Signs can help healthcare professionals accelerate early cancer detection. Currently being used by over 1,000 primary care practices within the NHS, See the Signs has demonstrated a 30 times increase in early cancer detection rates and has been recommended nationally by the NHS cancer teams.
Hi, I'm Mark Leaning. I'm founder of Directed Systems. Directed Systems is a digital health company with research and development in Cambridge, UK, recently established in the United States. Our product, Hypotension Decision Assist, or HDA, is FDA-cleared software supplied on a touchscreen PC, connected digitally to the standard patient monitor from which it streams the arterial blood pressure waveform. HDA provides an at-a-glance view of the current situation, what has happened, and the emerging situation, along with the underlying determinants of cardiovascular function. HDA has been designed with and for anesthesiologists to help you make informed proactive treatment decisions with the aim of reducing the incidence of hypotension and its associated complications and costs. We're looking for anesthesiologists to work with at Houston Methodist, interested in evaluating HDA in your operating rooms. Thanks very much for watching this video. I look forward to hearing from you.
About 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer during their lifetime. Hi, I'm Michael, co-founder of Elytra. At Elytra, we are combining the power of digital breast tomosynthesis and AI to reduce breast cancer mortality. Our products fit with the functionality and integration requirements defined by our radiologists. For example, a lesion can be confirmed as cancerous if seen in both the DBT views of the same breast. Our product, Viewfinder, provides a position mapping between the two views, circumventing the otherwise meticulous task of manual mapping by radiologists. We also provide products for computer-aided detection and diagnosis, which seamlessly integrate into the clinical workflow and help radiologists to quickly and more accurately decide which patients to call for further assessment. We see clinical collaboration and an initial investment of $600,000 to establish ourselves in the US screening market.
Machine Medicine has developed Kelvin. With Kelvin, the UPDRS assessment is performed using a tablet to gather both video clips and clinical scores. After recording a video, one can replay it and zoom in to examine the patient in greater detail, allowing more accurate scoring. All data management is taken care of within the platform, so there is no need to manually label or transfer data, eliminating human error and accidental data loss. Not only does Kelvin produce better data, but it saves an assessor around 30 minutes per patient. After assessments have been completed, the clinician can review and compare both the clinical scores and the video clips through a simple and intuitive interface. Naturally, Kelvin is fully HIPAA and GDPR compliant, enabling completely secure storage and management of patient data. Get in touch for a free trial of Kelvin.
Operating rooms are one of the most expensive areas of secondary care. Misplaced and lost equipment account for an annual cost of $765 billion to secondary care. Further, incomplete surgical safety protocols leads to preventable medical errors, which are the third leading cause of death. Scalpel has developed an AI platform that automates surgical protocols, including inventory management. You can use our platform to count and classify surgical instruments at more than 99% accuracy within a fraction of seconds. This platform can be used both in the sterilization labs and in the hospitals, thereby providing you an audit trail, ensuring that you always have the right instrument at the right time, but more importantly, prevent errors in both packaging and inside operating rooms, such as a retained foreign object. This system can be used without any tags. That means this is a lot less expensive compared to your traditional RFID systems. We have already co-developed and validated this technology in the NHS UK, and we want to bring this to your hospital for the first time into the US healthcare market. We look forward to working with you.